Hey guys, so I'm filming this on a whim, but this is going to be my second video. If the camera quality is a little bit different from last time, it's because I'm recording on my PC. This video is specifically going to be an archive of a debate I just had with Mike Brigandi on TikTok. Specifically going to be debating the proposition that trans women are women, with Mike Brigandi taking the affirmative position. However, before I start the video and before I just upload it for you guys, I wanted to give you guys kind of like an introduction to my position and just kind of show you my notes that I wrote on it. Within the debate, I didn't get the opportunity to kind of flesh out my entire position. It was kind of all over the place. It was kind of messy. We definitely should have had a moderator and so forth, but that's okay. I'm gonna make sure you guys can actually get my position and understand what I was trying to argue before you watch the debate. So let's begin. I'm just gonna screen share here. I'm gonna try and keep it as short as possible. So I have a document here that I wrote, just essentially organizing all of my opinions and my whole argument and so forth in the best way that I could possible. It's still a bit messy. However, I'm going to read through it for you guys. It'll take about 10 minutes, so if you want to get straight into the debate, I recommend that you skip like 10 minutes ahead. But before I get into anything, I want to start with a disclaimer. And so I wrote the disclaimer here. I'm mostly just going to be reading off here. So if you want to pause and read, that's probably much easier. In my philosophical framework, woman is a sex-based category that is an adult human female, so I do not classify trans women as women. I think the identity-based definition is not only incorrect, but because it obscures sex-based classification in high-stakes contexts, can produce downstream harms. That said, trans people are not responsible for those harms. They are navigating a world that often didn't make conceptual or institutional room for them. I don't view trans people as evil, inherently predatory, or deserving of demonization. Gender identity as a psychological concept is real. Gender incongruence or gender dysphoria is real, and these are undeniable. Trans people are undeniably entitled to necessary medical care for gender dysphoria and incongruence, and to basic dignity and social acceptance as trans individuals. My disagreement is strictly about the philosophical classification of a woman, not about anyone's humanity or right to live safely. I need to clarify that because I really don't want to see gross comments. I don't want to see things targeting trans people or saying they're dangerous to society and trying to scapegoat them. The debate here and the conversation here is merely about whether or not they fit into the category of woman, and this is a philosophical conversation, nothing more or less. Now let's get into my position of what I define as a woman. I'm going to try and summarize it as much as I can, but again, you can pause and read if you want to. I probably won't read every single little thing in here, but we'll see. So my definition of a woman is going to be an adult human female. Now, before I substantiate why my definition of a woman is going to be an adult human female, we're going to ground female in a biological definition. And I would argue this is because female inherently refers to something sex-based, and if it's sex-based, then it's inherently pertaining to biology. Now, within the case of philosophy, we have methods for sorting objects into different kinds and categories. Particularly in the case of biology, homeostatic property clusters provide the clearest and most consistent method for classification systems. HPCs are essential to biology. They're used for the construction of the contemporarily conceptualized phylogenetic tree. That's like a word jumble. I don't know why I did all that. And this phylogenetic tree, in case you're not familiar with it, is essentially what represents evolutionary relationships and common ancestry. It's how we classify organisms into certain species or groups and so forth. So the same way that I would classify, for example, E. coli or Staphylococcus bacteria or gram-negative or gram-positive, I cannot speak, or gram-positive bacteria is going to be based off of these homeostatic property clusters. And the more properties that you have, the more likely you are to fall under this category. So these categories function as a natural kind. So they typically refer to physical particles, chemical elements, and biological species. Now, this will become relevant later in the debate if you watch the whole 3 hours, which is a lot. But HPCs are natural kinds because they are not artificial, they're not arbitrary, and they're not invented or imposed on nature. They are, as defined by relevant philosophical literature, something which reflects some kind of relevant aspects about the real world and the facts about classifiers. So the reason why this is relevant is you'll see later in the debate, Mike essentially asks me, why do I need to provide some kind of objective boundary? And although he doesn't necessarily need to give me a natural kind of property cluster, that's not necessary, he can give me something that's socially conceptualized. The only issue is that it's a lot harder to justify socially conceptualized boundaries in comparison to something biological. And the reason why my HPCs wouldn't be similar to Mike's position, which again, you'll see this later in the video, but I'm just prefacing this. The reason why HPCs wouldn't be similar to prototypical nominalism or resemblance nominalism is because, again, HPCs are natural kinds. So an example of HPCs within biology would be something like gold. It has relevant properties, and that's how we characterize something as gold or any other particular element. In this sense, female is not particularly defined by any necessary or sufficient traits or conditions, but by a cluster of co-occurring biological properties, and they are co-occurring due to underlying stabilizing mechanisms. mechanisms. So just to give you an example, it is typically and statistically going to be the case that most people who have the hormonal baseline of a female, for example, are also going to have other relevant features associated with being female. This is because reproductive mechanisms within humans are not independent. They don't just pop up and they don't just work by themselves. They're co-occurring. So just a couple of examples of underlying stabilizing mechanisms includes 1, shared genetic and developmental programs, also known as common etiology. A second example of a stabilizing mechanism would be regulatory feedback loops, and these are also known as physiological homeostasis. And an example of a regulatory feedback loop would be the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, which stabilizes sex-typical endocrine patterns that stabilize clusters of secondary traits. Super complicating, but I just want to outline the biology very clear for everyone. That word salad, that word jumble, that sounds like very jargony and very confusing, just is referring to overall bodily homeostasis. The third example of a stabilizing mechanism is going to be the concept of functional integration. So traits essentially fit together because they're parts of an integrated biological system. In the case of reproductive anatomy, hormone responsiveness, and developmental timing, there's a formation of an integrated system. They all essentially rely on each other and function in coherence with each other. There's a few more, but this is just a list of few of stabilizing mechanisms. So we don't typically have one mechanism like, the endocrine system or reproductive development or genetic expression and so forth, just functioning independently and by itself within a male or a female. When it comes to biology, these reproductive mechanisms are co-occurring. And again, this will be relevant later on. However, and this will come up later, this is not to be confused with other cluster types such as prototypical resemblance. They are overall a cluster of co-occurring properties sustained by homeostatic mechanisms that cause and stabilize clustering. The benefit of using HPCs in this particular discussion is that no singular property must be present in every member, and the kind does not require perfectly sharp boundaries. Biological kinds don't typically have one essence, yet they still function as natural, real, and explanatory groupings. So for example, if you define a female with one strict property, that is the capacity to reproduce, ovaries, XX chromosomes, etc., you immediately get absurd conclusions. A female who's infertile and incapable of reproducing is now no longer considered a female. HPCs allow accuracy by allowing a member to lack one element of the cluster and still fall under the kind, because kind membership is supported by a broader network of properties. Thus, individuals with chromosomal disorders, atypical karyotypes, atypical gene expression affecting reproductive anatomy, infertility, missing ovaries, extra structures, etc., are still considered highly likely to be female and cluster closest with the category female. Now, HPCs aren't something random that I'm bringing up or something annoying that I'm bringing up. It is the leading account of biological natural kinds because biological categories are often variable and messy. There will always be an edge case in which the rule does not apply. So take mycoplasma bacteria, for example. In spite of the fact that they are gram-negative, and gram-negative cells typically have a peptidoglycan and a cell wall and so forth, mycoplasma do not have this cell wall or outer membrane, yet they are still considered to be gram-negative cells. So essentially, when it comes to HPCs, they are biologists' way of explaining that messiness without giving up realism or objectivity. It's the very reason we still consider people with Down syndrome to be a part of the human species, because we don't consider chromosomal number alone. That is not the essence of human classification. Now, when it comes to property clusters, as mentioned before, we typically run into issues of borderline cases when it comes to realism, and HPCs solve this issue of borderline cases. So that's why HPCs are good in this context and why biologists use it. So in my particular argument, we will focus on the candidate properties for the female cluster. I'm not going to get into them all specifically. I'm just going to run through them real quickly. Again, if you want to read them all, you can pause. But mainly just reproductive organization. I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know why I keep stuttering today. You'll see it in the live as well. But yeah, reproductive organization is just going to refer to the orientation towards overproduction and developmental pathways associated with female reproductive anatomy. Now, the second candidate property for the female cluster would be typical reproductive anatomy. I think this is intuitive, like uterus, ovaries, the vaginal canal patterns, things like that. And then the third thing would be typical developmental endocrinology. And I wrote hormonal environments and developmental cascades that co-occur with female phenotypes. I can't speak. And so what this means here is essentially just having the hormonal baseline of a typical female. Having the hormonal baseline that females typically need to be healthy and to live, and also to maintain homeostasis. Now, the fourth one is just going to be secondary sex characteristics. This is intuitive, things like breast, pubic hair, waist to hip ratio, lengthening of arms, blah, 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 development of the vulva. We also have genetic development. So this is just going to be X-linked traits and autosomal traits that result in the expression of female characteristics, both primary, secondary, and hormonal. If you want to go through each of those genes, feel free. Now, if an individual is philosophically versed, the concern of classifications becoming epistemically opaque arises. And what I mean by that is the concern of vagueness. However, there is no issue with the concession that my view has some fuzziness at its edges. Borderline and edge cases are a generic cost of most real-world concepts. For example, take the electromagnetic color spectrum. Most individuals would agree that it's not possible to demarcate or mark or specifically pick out where the color red begins and ends on the spectrum. There inevitably is fuzziness, but I'm not denying that. The relevant comparison is not, does it have zero borderlines, but which theory provides a better and more exhaustive structure for adjudicating cases. HPCs are currently the most complete and internally consistent model that we have within biology in comparison to its prototype or resemblance nominalism counterpart. It provides non-arbitrary causal and explanatory mechanisms for why properties cluster and why certain features matter more. It is still a disciplined anchored criteria. 1. It tracks stable causal structure and explains and predicts biological patterns. 2. It provides inductive utility or reliable inferences for medicine and biology. And 3. Clustered traits are held together by real mechanisms, as cited above, and they are not arbitrary or defined by social convention. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have defined what it means to be a female, but I haven't explained to you guys why this is relevant to the definition of what it means to be a woman. So what is necessary for me to substantiate now is my definition of a woman. My starting point will be semantic and descriptive. I am not interested as to how people individually define terms or how psychologists posit theoretical models. For example, gender identity is a psychological model that is theoretical and operational. It doesn't automatically settle the broader semantical question about what is gender. Again, this will become relevant. In the case of my arguments, I am particularly interested in how people commonly use and understand the term woman in ordinary language. If the question is, are trans women women, then one necessary preliminary question is, what does the word woman pick out in common usage? That question is regarding public meaning, not what the term ought to mean. The strongest way to substantiate common usage is not by asking people what they think they mean, which is in surveys and polls, but by analyzing how people actually use the word across large bodies of text. My substantiation for common usage will involve a corpus-based approach. Contextual language modeling and word sense methods using BERT-based contextual embeddings. The core claim that I will semantically be defending is that in ordinary language, the primary usage of a woman typically refers to a sex-based or biological core, that is, an adult human female. On the other hand, things such as gender identity or social uses, although less commonly occurring in comparison, are plausibly secondary or theory-driven extensions rather than the default semantic anchor. Essentially, what I'm saying here, if it's getting really confusing and I'm like throwing a word salad at you, is that I believe that the primary common usage definition is going to be something based in biology, based in sex, and that is the core of the definition, but that's not to say that there aren't layers to the definition. Under the definition of the term, there can be primary definitions, and then there can be secondary or extended definitions. And when it comes to these secondary or extended definitions, I think they're a little bit more lax, and we refer to the social role more in this context. Thus, this is not mere intuition, but an empirically driven claim about usage that can be tested. Now, my substantiation for corpus modeling in comparison or instead of surveying or polling is that corpus modeling is the most relevant test in this case because it looks at how the term behaves in context. That is, what it regularly co-occurs with, what it presupposes, what kind of inferences it supports, and so forth. If a large and diverse corpus shows that the term woman is most often used in contexts that semantically pattern with female biology, then that supports the claim that the public semantic center of gravity is sex-based. Simply put, if the corpus shows that most people use the term woman in a biological sense, then that means that it's its primary use. If instead the dominant contextual pattern were identity usage, such as identifies as or pronoun-based description, then that would support the opposite. So why BERT and word sensing is more relevant than polls and surveys? My reasons for this are mostly due to the methodology when it comes to polling and surveys. First of all, surveys merely measure what people say they mean under a specific prompt, specific social context with framing effects. Corpora instead measures actual language behavior in a comparatively natural environment. Second of all, confounding variables are very, very prevalent when it comes to polling. So poll responses swing depending on wording, political cues, or perceived social penalty. My third reason for BERT being more relevant is interpretation variance. So two people can answer yes in a survey and mean completely different things. Corpus reduces this margin of error by directly analyzing contextual usage rather than relying on participants' meta-linguistic introspection. Number 4 is going to be the natural language pipeline allows scaling to large models, consistent procedures, and isolate variables. So the experiment is far more tight and replicable. And again, it lowers the margin of error. We have less confounding variables. It is just epistemologically a better way to test this. Now, I didn't include the code. However, when I get the chance, likely maybe when I upload this, I'm not sure yet, I'll put it in the description if I finished it. If not, it'll be in the description later. But I'm currently working on code to create a BERT-based model that can determine, the usage of woman or man in social or biological contexts. And I'm going to do this using a large data set of literature. And when I do this, I'm going to use it from multiple languages. Just explaining here the reason why I'm doing this. The reason why I'm using literature instead of, for example, polling and so forth is because literature is intentional language, intending to preserve meaning clearly enough to analyze. And 2, literature is how language is transmitted and stabilized, including not just casual speech, but references, metaphor, and categorization. 3, non-restrictance to a single culture or demographic. So me using literature allows me to look at a broader body of evidence rather than polling that's likely limited to the West. So it's not limited to a single culture or demographic, and thus this allows for more analysis of other countries and languages that might not have relevant polling. It's important to remember Americans are not the arbiters of semantics. If the claim is regarding common usage, then the dataset should be broad across regions, time periods, and languages. If it is not, then it is methodologically weak, because we cannot consider true public usage. And I discussed the issue of cherry picking. We want to use multilinguistic models. Now I have my normative argument, but I'm going to be completely frank here. Admittedly, I didn't really fully flesh it out. I don't have I guess I would say what I personally believe, the standard that I hold myself to. I don't believe that I have a well-formed argument on my normative claim when it comes to how we should use women. So I'm going to skip over this, especially because we didn't really get into it into the live. But just to summarize my point, because I know that was a lot of information, I know it was a lot of jargon, I know it was a lot of big words. So in case you don't understand them, just to summarize my point, I basically define a woman as an adult human female. Female would be defined by homeostatic property clusters that we use within biology to group things and group objects into a particular category. So what gives someone membership to the female category is having candidate properties. That is, particular properties that make them cluster into the group of female. They don't need to have every single property, they just need to have most of the properties so they cluster closest with female. Now, the purpose of defining what a female is so that we can clearly understand what makes someone a female. It's not just large gametes, it's not just ovaries, it's not just breasts, it's a culmination of properties. Now, how does this relate to my definition that a woman is an adult human female? And where did I get this idea, and how can I prove that that's how we typically use it? I can prove this using corpus-based modeling. So we can use BERT models, which I'm not sure if I explained this before, but essentially what they can do is I can give it a piece of literature and it can read from left to right and right to left and then determine the contextual usage of a term within the text. So let's say I have the term woman used in a particular sentence. It can determine whether or not woman is being used with some kind of sex-based reference or some kind of social-based reference. And I can do this with a data set of literature, which I am currently coding. I haven't finished it at the time of filming this and at the time of doing this debate. However, I have made much smaller scaled code and these demonstrated that across languages like Chinese, English, Arabic, Russian, I think it was Italian, Spanish, the primary usage was indeed something sex-based. When it came to English and Spanish speakers, it was a little bit more variable, at least in comparison to the other languages. So when it came to the other languages, about 80% to 90% of the pieces of literature I gave it, the articles and so forth, use the term woman in a biological or sex-based way. So it has a sex core. However, when it came to Spanish and English, I think it was about 60%, maybe 70% that used it with a sex-based core. So again, I'm still coding this. When I finish it, I will publish it. Anybody can review it. People can let me know if they feel like there's gaps in it that I need to fix and so forth. But I think it's pretty good. I think it's fine. But I will publish that eventually. At some point it will be in the description, either when I upload this or at some point in the future. At least the larger model, once I get all of the data sets because they're hard to look through and so forth. Okay, so that's essentially the crux of my position. That's a summary of it. If you have any questions about my position or things that I said in this portion of the video or even throughout the debate and you want me to clarify them, just let me know in the comments. I'll try to answer as many comments as I can. This was my first debate, so it was a little bit messy. I wish I did do a few things differently and I wish we did have a moderator. I will preface with this though, I ask that, you know, the same kindness that you would extend to me, extend that to Mike. Don't be rude in the comments. Try to be good faith when it comes to addressing his arguments, just as I would like you to be good faith when it comes to addressing my own arguments. And also remember, this is live. You know, there are moments where Mike might have misspoken. There's moments where I misspoke. We all blunder here and there. So again, just try to be good faith. Try to fill in the gaps. Okay, now let's watch. Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great.
Okay. Do you want to have a moderator? I mean...
I don't care.
Okay,
I
don't mind
just
either.
I just don't want to be muted every 2 seconds.
No, that's fine. I won't do that. I think we can both... I think we're capable of being respectful. Okay, just give me 1 second, and then we can get started. Okay. I guess we can start off by, I think I remember, I don't know if it was in your comment or your first DM, I can't recall, but I think you mentioned that you feel like I don't fully understand your position. So, I mean, if you want to start, I guess we can talk about, we can debate the proposition trans women are women, and you can take the affirmative, and just, yeah, you can articulate your position to me, and I'll try to understand it better and engage with it better.
Yeah, so you made a video about me responding, and you said basically that womanhood is defined by experience. That's not my position. I don't think it's defined by experience. It's a cluster concept. It's defined by a multitude of traits and things. Right? There's a social component. There's a neurobiological component. There are many different components to gender or womanhood. And then you said that we don't have two discrete types of brains within the human species. Well, there is emerging evidence that we do have. There is a spectrum of different brain phenotypes that are correspondent to people's sexualities and gender identities. So there is evidence that there are different types of brain phenotypes. And then you said how I experience it, how I feel, or how I identify doesn't define my reality. Well, the problem is that's not how I'm using the word identity. The way you're using identity is the sense that it's like simply associating yourself with a category. The way I'm using the word identity is to be like a biological phenomenon. The brain is what gives rise to this identity. The way it's like identity is, in my view, an innate sense of self, an innate sense of who you are. And this is going to have a neurobiological underpinning. And so the reason why trans women are women, in my view, is that they have this neurobiological underpinning that predisposes them to being women, to fit in within the woman category. And all a woman is a gender identity that aligns with certain female typical traits. And so that's why trans women are women, because they have that identity. They have a woman identity. I have a man identity. They have a woman identity. And there's different types of identities people can have. But then you said, you analogize this by saying that, well, if I say I'm 20, that doesn't mean I am 20. Well, first of all, we're not saying that because somebody says they are women, therefore they are women. That's not my argument either. That's a misunderstanding. What we're saying is they're women because that's their identity. And secondly, chronological age is not analogous to biological or the neuroscience behind gender. They're two different categories of things. when it comes to age, there's no neural correlate to your age. There's no identity. There's no identity of age. It doesn't exist. But there is a gender identity in the brain that you can find. So you cannot even compare these two things. Lastly, you said that what I'm saying is simply that womanhood is all completely coming from the brain. No, it's not just coming from the brain. The brain is just the thing that predisposes us to having a certain identity, but womanhood is a social category. There's also, like I said before, a social component. It's more accurate to say that our identities are coming from our brain, but we deem woman or man or any gender as going to be it's going to be socially constructed. So yeah, hope that kind of clears it up for you, and excited
Okay,
for
yeah.
the
I guess the first thing that I'm interested in, I'm interested in a couple of things, but I guess the first thing would be the scientific aspect of it. You make the claim that gender identity has neurobiological underpinnings. I'm fine with granting that, but I'm just interested as like to where there's two issues with this. I'm interested as to where you're getting this evidence from, as far as I understand neuroscience, because I study this, doesn't have a consensus on there being not only sexed brains but also gender identity being something that is neurobiological and determined by structure. So yeah, let's start with that first, and then I'll get into the second thing.
Yeah, well, first of all, the evidence is there are dozens of neurobiological studies on transgender people. And we have like one called Sex versus Gender Associations with Brain Structure. It's in the Clinical Neuroscience Journal. It took a look at people's brains, it did brain scans, and found that, yeah, there was like I was saying before, a spectrum of brains correlated to people's genders. Another one is called the Neurobiological Characteristics Associated with Gender Identity. This is another neuroimaging study. It's a cohort study. I did the same thing. Another one called Brain Sex is Shifted in Transgender Woman. It showed, again, that people's brains are shifted. When we look at someone's brain, we find that it's shifted towards their respective identity. It's very good evidence that that's the case. And it is the consensus amongst a few organizations around the world that there is at least a biological underpinning behind gender. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Obstetricians, the American Urological Association, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, the American College of Physicians, the American Association of Clinical Endocrinology, and many more. All of these organizations agree with the consensus that there is at least a biological component to gender. It's not strictly social.
Yeah, I understand that some organizations can agree with this, but nonetheless, it still remains the fact that there is no neuroscientific consensus, at least amongst neuroscientists and researchers, that there is that biological underpinning. But regardless, I'm willing to grant it, but I still want to discuss a few other things. The first thing is I think you mentioned in your videos that these people are essentially, I think you said something along the lines of your sex hormones develop the biological structure of your brain, and that then goes on to develop some kind of female typical or male typical structure. And you said these sex hormones influence brain development in utero and in early development of a fetus and a baby and so forth. And I'm just interested that, like, do you have a longitudinal study showing that these individuals who are trans had these female typical brains at birth, and then they also ended up developing gender dysphoria in spite of the fact that they were male? The reason why I asked this.
Yes, this is a basic biological fact. We know that that your sex hormones affect how your brain is developing, and we also know that the differentiation of the brain occurs in utero. And the studies I mentioned actually show that.
I'm not contesting
So
that.
we have one study called Early Androgen Exposure in Human Gender Development.
Hold on. I understand that you have the studies, but my question is, do you have a longitudinal study? Do you know what that is?
A study that goes over a long period of time?
Yeah, so I'm interested. Do you have a study where they take babies, multiple babies, and track them over time, their brain development,
We don't need
showing
to
that
do
they...
that. We don't need to do that. We don't
Okay,
need to track.
I'm asking
We don't
because
need
you
to track
mentioned...
babies over time. The
Hold on,
point
hold on.
is
I'm just
that
asking because you mentioned in your video that these brain structures are developed in early development. That estrogen, what you're referring to, these sex hormones that, you know, construct the structure of your brain, this happens like most significantly in early development and in utero. So I'm just interested, do you have longitudinal studies demonstrating that? If not, that's fine. We could just
we don't
move on
need
to the next thing.
we don't need longitudinal studies for this because again we can see babies' brains. We can look at the brains and we find that in utero they are affected by their hormones. But we don't track somebody from birth. We don't need to track somebody from birth and figure out we can just take a look at people today and go, and the corroborating data we take from scans of babies in utero, right? We don't need to actually track them down over many years. That makes no sense. You can just look at the brain as it is today and go, oh yeah, that's how they develop because of this other evidence. That's how science works. We make a cumulative case. We don't look at, you know, if we want to know how trees grow, we don't go, do you have a study that shows me a seed became a tree over 25 years? We don't even do that. Right?
The reason
we
why
have
I asked
examples of a seed growing in a certain way. We have examples of
Yeah.
the different stages of a tree growing. We don't need to look at one tree and see it grow over 30 years. That makes no sense.
Okay, the reason why it does make sense is that because if you're isolating the variable to sex hormones, you need to provide me with a longitudinal study showing that this is consistent from birth in order to isolate that variable. The reason why is because I think you understand that there is general consensus amongst neuroscientists that brains are indeed plastic, right? They have plasticity, right? So they can change over time by social, environmental influences. So even something as simple as my diet can influence the structure of my brain and how it develops and so forth. Me getting a brain injury at a young age can develop it. Hold on. The reason why I'm asking for a longitudinal study is for you to isolate it to purely sex hormones from birth and in utero and so forth. I want to see that isolation by a longitudinal study.
You're caricaturizing the situation. It's not that it's only sex hormones. There's a multitude of factors involved with how the brain develops. But the point is that we know that hormones, particularly in utero, because there are certain surges of hormones that occur at this particular time period. It doesn't happen in that way the rest of your life. It only happens in utero. And that's why we look at that particular stage of life and go, oh yeah, the brain is heavily influenced by those hormones. And we don't, just like when it comes to a tree, like, do you think we need to have longitudinal studies of a tree growing? Like we need to look at one tree and see how it grows over 30 years to know how trees grow?
Yes. Yeah. You don't think we
have to look at one tree? You think we have to look at one tree?
No, not one singular. No, not one singular particular tree. But we would have a sample.
This is not how science works.
It is how science. Then what's the? I do research. I do research, and I'm literally a biology major. I have research assistantship. I understand how like scientific methodology.
You're a biology major?
Yes,
I am. You think that we have to look at one tree develop over 30 years?
To understand tree development and so forth, yes, we do need to have a longitudinal study and track it over time.
No, we don't.
Why would you not?
Because we can look at the tree at various stages and we go, oh yeah, trees grow in these particular ways. We don't have to look at one tree.
I'm curious. How would you look at the I'm curious. How would you look at the same tree in various different stages? That's a longitudinal study. It's assessing the tree over time in different stages.
It's ridiculous to do that. Like for example, do you think?
Okay, listen. Calm down.
No, Raz. Right? No. Do you think that in order to know how humans grow, we have to study one particular baby over 35 years to see how it develops?
No, listen. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm asking for right now. I mean, you didn't really get me on anything. I don't know why you're doing that. I'm asking you for a longitudinal study for the purpose of you.
We don't need a longitudinal study for this. That's not how science works. That's not how science works. You don't know how science works.
I do know how science.
We make cumulative cases. We don't.
I didn't say. I never said. I never said one baby. I never said. Let's calm down. Listen, we can be respectful. I'm asking you for a longitudinal study because for you to isolate that variable to sex hormones and say that's what structures predominantly the brain, I need to see that isolation of the variable.
Again, It's not. I never said just sex hormones influence the brain. There's a multitude of factors,
So then
but
what's
we
the
know
relevance of bringing up sex hormones?
because they have a huge influence on how the brain develops with respect to people's genders.
Okay, so then tell me,
Because we know that we study trans people, for example, we can study their hormones, we can study their brains, and we can make the connections between how the brain evolved, developed over time, and what happens in babies in the utero.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have the longitudinal study. I guess the second issue that I have with the claim that you're
You
making
don't have a
is
longitudinal study of a person, of yourself growing.
I don't need a single person. I think you misunderstand
And I don't
longitudinal
need a
studies.
study for fucking trans people. Just like I don't need a study to show you how I grew over 30 years. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm not saying I need a study of you. I need a study to understand how humans in general progress and develop. Yes, I would need to have a longitudinal study and track them over time to track
No,
that
we
development and
don't. We
isolate
don't need to
variables.
track a person down for
It
50
doesn't need
years.
to.
That's
Okay,
not how
anyways.
biology works. I'm sorry. You're
Okay,
you're just
that's fine,
not
that's fine, that's
understanding
fine.
how science works.
Okay.
It's
Anyways.
cumulative. It's we expected.
Listen, for you to establish a causal relation, a cause-effect relationship that sex hormones affect brain development and brain structure, yes, you do need a longitudinal study. I
No,
don't
we
know what you're
don't.
talking about. Yes, you
No,
do.
we
But
can
anyways,
study it in utero. We can study it in
okay,
babies in
that's
utero.
fine.
That's not enough for you?
That's fine. Let's move on to the next thing. What I wanted to move on to was
It's fine.
is that
It's fine
listen,
now.
your argument. Listen, you're just not going to provide me with a longitudinal study, and you don't understand the relevance of it, so it's fine. So let's
This
move on
is
to
an
the
appeal
next
to
thing.
futility fallacy. You're just
This is
suggesting,
can
oh,
we?
well, it's
Okay.
not perfect, therefore you're wrong.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, the world isn't perfect. We don't need a perfect world to know how the world works, though. We don't need
Yeah,
data
I
in every
never
single thing
made
in the
that.
universe
I never
to
made that
know
argument.
how the universe operates.
I never made that argument. But anyways, the second issue that I had was that your argument is essentially parasitic upon sex. If you're arguing that gender identity is developed or determined by the brain structure, and the brain structure is developed by sex hormones, then you are arguing that a trans person needs to have the hormonal baseline of a female that would then produce the biological structure, female typical structure, or a brain structure. They would need to have that hormonal baseline in order to have that female typical brain structure and then be considered a woman.
No. So, first of all, my argument is not solely contingent on the neuroscience. My argument is linguistically valid in the sense that I made a linguistic case that trans women are women. The neuroscience just happens to support my argument further. But my point is that we do have studies showing that the brain, the hormones are not relevant in the adult stages. They're only relevant to a certain degree, right? Not as much as in utero. But when it comes to adult people, we look at their brain structures. We look at the way the brain is oriented, the way the brain is structured, and that's how we know, yeah, this person has a particular brain phenotype that, oh, look, it's highly corresponding to their gender. Oh, would you look at that? That's the evidence that transgender have a particular brain that is different from others. Just like I have a different brain than you with respect to my gender. And so we can categorize these different brains and say, oh yeah, if you have this type of brain, it fits in this category, that's a man. If it's in this category, that would predispose somebody to being a woman.
Okay, so you think that essentially if brains are relevantly similar, then I can therefore identify with them.
What?
So if
you don't identify with the brain. It doesn't
I'm
make any
asking
sense.
you. Okay. So
your
you have a
identity is
female. Let
coming
me
from
explain
your
to you.
brain.
Can I explain to you what I'm trying to say?
Okay.
You're referring to female typical brains, right? And so you're saying if a trans person has a relevantly similar brain, that is a brain structure similar to that of a female typical person, then they therefore can identify as a woman. So I'm asking you if things are relevantly similar, brain structures are. I'm asking you if brain structures are relevantly similar. Does that now mean I can identify with that?
The evidence highly suggesting that if somebody has a particular brain type, they are going to be predisposed to identifying a certain
I'm asking
way.
you for your position. If my brain, for example, is relevantly similar to a female typical brain, does that now mean that I identify as a woman?
It's likely that your brain, if it fits in the woman category, you're going to be predisposed to identifying as woman. Yes.
Okay, is it fitting in the woman category or the female category? Is it a female typical brain or a
Female
woman
is a
typical brain?
sex. It's not a gender. Female is a sex. And
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm asking for the
sex,
distinction.
do you recognize the sex-gender distinction?
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you for the distinction. Is it a woman-like brain or is it a female-like brain?
Woman-like. There's no such thing as a female
Okay, so then what
brain.
is the relevance? Yes, there is. So within, wait, this is so funny. Within neuroscience, when we talk about sexed brains, it's in the word. We're talking about sexed brains. So female typical or male typical brains. We don't necessarily refer to like woman typical or man typical brains, because that would vary from society to society and culture to culture, right? Anyways, but yeah, we have sexed brains. So I'm asking you, are we referring to we're referring to something woman. What is the relevance?
Brains.
Hold on. If we're referring to woman as the social construct, then what is the relevance of bringing up sex hormones?
Because sex hormones influence how the brain develops, and the brain's development influences your gender.
Okay, so then the brain's development being parasitic upon sex hormones means that what do you mean it's irrelevant? Wait, I don't think you understand how
You think sex hormones equals your sex?
No, but I don't think you understand how.
So
wait, hold on. Can I finish speaking? I don't think you understand how sex hormones work, or biology works, or these mechanisms that are how our reproductive biology works, right? Sex hormones are co-occurring with other biological mechanisms. They don't occur independently. You don't just happen to have the hormonal baseline of a female, but then like you have everything else that's male. That's not typical. It is typically 99. Hold on. My point here is that hold on. It is 99% of the time going to be the case that if someone has the hormonal baseline of a female, that they also likely have the other biological co-occurring mechanisms like primary sex characteristics, secondary sex characteristics, genes, and so forth.
That's not true at all.
Yes, that's how biology works. Wait, can you tell me? Wait. If that's not true, can you tell me? Wait. If that's not true, can you tell me the co-occurring mechanisms?
First of all, we know that certain people have, in the case
I'm
of
asking
females,
you, can you tell me the co-occurring
they have
mechanisms?
more testosterone than males sometimes.
Can you tell me the co-occurring mechanisms?
Wait. Do you agree?
No. You can't dodge my question. Don't dodge my question. I'm asking you. What are the co-occurring mechanisms if you believe that that's not how it works?
The co-occurring mechanisms for sex hormone production?
For biological properties, when it comes to being female, what are the co-occurring mechanisms?
The gonads, we're talking about the androgen receptors.
No. Okay, so these are how co-occurring biological properties work, right? They are underlying stabilizing mechanisms. You don't just happen to have the hormonal baseline of a female arbitrarily, right? It is typically going to be the case.
Hold on, let me explain it.
Hold on, let me explain. Can I finish? Let me explain the relevance to you, right? So it is likely going to be the case that if I have the hormonal baseline of a female, that I am also going to likely be female in all the other relevant aspects, because there are stabilizing mechanisms. For example,
this is irrelevant.
Hold on, it is relevant though. Can you let me finish?
I agree that females have a particular baseline.
You have not let me speak longer than 30 seconds. Can you please let me finish?
That just because you're female doesn't mean you're a woman.
Can you let me finish?
You could be a man and be female. You can be a woman and be male.
Okay, that's not what I'm saying.
They're two different categories of things.
You're misunderstanding. Can I please finish? Okay, great. So there are underlying stabilizing mechanisms such as shared genetic and developmental programs, gonadal differentiation, genital organ development, regulatory feedback loops, concepts such as functional integration. So this relates to traits that essentially fit together because they're parts of an integrated biological system and so forth. There's much more I can get into, but they're stabilizing mechanisms and they co-occur together. So as I mentioned before, you have the expression of particular genes, and these genes express certain systems and organs and so forth and hormones. These don't just occur independently. We don't just happen to have a male, right?
I agree.
Hold on. We don't just happen to have a male who has the sex hormone baseline of a female that would then result in the brain development of a female typical or woman typical brain.
We do. Yes, we do. That happens all the time. We have a person who's a male, but it turns out that their brain develops into more a female type of brain or woman type brain.
It is statistically likely that if someone happens to have the hormonal baseline of a female as a male, that they're going to be. Hold on, can I finish? Can I finish? You didn't even let me finish. You didn't even let me finish. Let me finish. it is statistically likely to be the case that if we have a male who has the hormonal baseline of a female, that is going to be the case that he has some kind of chromosomal or genetic disorder that is resulting in the expression of these characteristics. And alongside that, he's going to have the expression of other similar female characteristics. That's why we have intersex people.
Yeah, that's irrelevant to gender.
I'm not saying it's relevant to gender. Mike, let me help you track it. My point here is the purpose of mentioning this is you are saying that these sex hormones are going to at least initiate development of the brain into something that is female typical. And I just don't think you understand how co-occurring biological mechanisms work.
Okay, so then why are there studies demonstrating that androgen exposure influences how the human brain develops?
I'm not saying that hormones don't influence how the brain develops.
Okay, so then what is your point here?
You are saying that there is a link between sex hormones developing a
Yes, and
phenotypical
the brain
brain
development.
and then
Yes.
causing someone to have gender incongruence. So I'm telling you, it is not going to be the case
Yes.
statistically. It is not going to be the case statistically that a male has the hormonal baseline of a female that then produces the brain
That's why
structure
it's
that is female typical.
That's why it's statistically unlikely to be transgender.
Oh my god. Okay, I have a
That's
question
why.
for you. If you
That's
believe
exactly
if you
why.
believe that trans people have the hormonal baseline of let's say a trans woman has the hormonal baseline of a female, right? In spite of the fact that they're male, and they haven't transitioned yet, then why is it the case that they need to go in hormone replacement therapy?
Because hormone replacement therapy enhances somebody's gender expression, okay?
But they already
We're
have
not
the
talking
hormonal
about-
baseline.
No, they don't. That's not what ever
But
said.
that's
No,
in
of course
order for
not.
you to develop a female typical brain, you would need to have the hormonal baseline. What?
In utero, not after puberty.
Okay, so do you have a study demonstrating to
We're
me that these
talking
trans?
about in
Wait.
utero. That's
So
why
give me
my
give
whole
me a
argument
study.
was in
Wait.
utero,
So give
not
me a
after
study.
utero.
Wait, amazing. So give me a study that shows me that these trans people had a female typical brain in utero.
They have a female typical brain now. That's what, and it translated throughout time. That's what they were born with.
You are really shifting the goalpost. Either you're being really disingenuous or you're genuinely not tracking what I'm trying to communicate.
Do you think your brain can switch over time from male to female type brain?
Brains have plasticity.
You think that's not what I asked you? Do you think the brain can transform over 20 years from a male type brain to a female type brain?
I don't believe in sex brains, but if we're referring to male typical brains and female typical brains, that is what was typically associated with them. We don't have
right.
How do I say this, dimorphic brains, but if you're referring to typical female brains, yeah, I believe that because plasticity. Yes, I do. I literally study neuroscience. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't even know what a co-occurring mechanism is.
So this is basic neuroscience, and we know that the brain doesn't change that much, such that somebody can have a male to a female type brain. That doesn't happen. We know that it stays rather consistent.
You think with 100% certainty? Wait. Can you give me a study that shows me that a brain can't change to that extent at all? Like 100% cannot change to that extent.
There's no evidence that your brain can go from male to female type over time.
Okay, that doesn't mean that it's impossible, right? I'm telling you that brains have plasticity. Wait, brains have plasticity? Wait, brains have the reason why trans people, the reason why some trans people are likely to have a female typical brain, let's say for example a trans woman has a female typical brain, is not because they have the sex hormonal baseline of a female. That's ridiculous. That would make them likely intersex statistically. Let me finish speaking. Let me finish speaking.
You have no idea.
Oh my god, we need to be classy about this. We can't engage with each other if you don't let me finish my points and you interrupt me and I can't even land. And then I end up forgetting my points because you're interrupting me. I give you the grace to at least finish your sentences, so give me the grace to finish my sentences. My point here is, I don't even remember what I was saying, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, my point here is that they don't have that sex hormonal baseline. I think the reason why trans people have the typical brain of the gender that they desire, right? That is incongruent with their sex, right? I think the reason why they have that brain is, why are you like shaking your head? I haven't even landed. I think the reason why they have that brain.
There's no such thing as desiring a brain.
Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish, please? Can I finish, please? Yeah, so the reason why they have that incongruence, I think, has to do more with plasticity. and how do I say this? How
Okay.
they were socialized and raised and so forth, or perhaps
Okay.
it's a neural. Can I finish speaking? Can I finish?
Where's
speaking?
your evidence of that?
Or
Where's your
perhaps,
evidence of that?
or perhaps
Where's
it's
your
a
evidence of
neural.
that?
Or can I finish speaking? Are you gonna let me speak? Because you're making me forget my points because you keep interrupting, and I don't know if you're trying to be rhetorical, but it's failing you. You're looking really bad. Let me finish my points. So what I was saying is that the reason why they have this incongruence, I believe, would likely be either due to some kind of environmental or social aspect that causes brain plasticity, or it's going to be because
where's your evidence of
maybe.
that?
Can I finish speaking?
Just
Let
give
me
your evidence.
finish.
You're just giving us
Mike,
your
maybe this is
beliefs. I
why
want evidence.
Mike, maybe this is why people mute you. Let me finish speaking. You won't even let me get past the first sentence. You're fumbling so bad, you're blundering, and that's why you don't want to let me finish. Let me finish. My point is, and I can give you my reasons why if you will let me land. My point in that being is that I think that the reason why they have that incongruence is because of some kind of social or environmental factor that influences plasticity, coupled with the fact that I think there might be some kind of neurodevelopmental or neurogenetic component to it that we still don't understand. Because this is typical when it comes to a lot of neurological disorders. I do think that there's a real neurological reason as to why people experience these things in gender dysphoria. I don't think it's some kind of fake thing. It definitely is a real disorder, and people struggle with it, and people struggle with this incongruence. But you tying it to sex hormones is, I think, just disingenuous, because you don't have a longitudinal study demonstrating that to me. The sex hormones, my point here is, are not relevant.
I've given you several studies. Sexual
the sex hormones are not
great.
the sex hormones are not relevant.
You don't think sex hormones are relevant to brain development?
No, I just don't think they're relevant to the argument you're making.
They are extremely relevant because, again, in utero, your hormones affect how the brain develops, which then goes on to predispose your identity. That's
okay,
why
so can you provide me with a longitudinal study showing that these people have in utero a female typical brain?
Here we go again. Provide me a longitudinal study that you grew to your age today.
Okay, that's fine. You
It
can
doesn't
keep
exist. That's not how science works, man.
That's fine. You're just gonna keep.
We don't need longitudinal studies for everything. We don't.
Let's move on.
That's not how science works. You don't know how science works.
Let's move on to the next thing. I'm interested. How do you determine the definition of a woman? Why is it the case that just because there's this neurobiological underpinning, even if I grant it, even though I'm not convinced by your evidence, I'm not convinced by your argument, even if I grant that gender identity is determined by neurobiological structure and function and so forth, why is it the case that this gender identity and the way that your brain is structured would now define what it means to be a woman?
It's not that gender identity defines what it means to be a woman. What defines to be a woman is socially constructed, right? In certain countries, what woman is different than other countries. There's certain social roles women fulfill in certain places. There are certain expressions women typically have in certain places. And so it's going to be culturally contextual. It's not going to be something that there is no objective definition of woman. It doesn't exist. There's no objective definition of a car or a tree.
How do we meaningfully track what a woman is if you don't believe that there's like an objective definition?
A woman
Do we have
is
some kind of
the reason why I say woman is a gender identity is because that's what best fits the data. That's what best fits the social atmosphere of life today. When I walk around the street and I look at somebody, I don't look into their pants. I don't have to know their sex to know, or I don't have to know their gametes to know that, yeah, they exhibit certain feminine or masculine qualities. That's going to be indexical to their expression, their gender expression.
I think you're equivocating with a woman.
I don't need to look at their genitals to know that this person exhibits a kind of manhood or a womanhood, because womanhood and manhood are going to be based on a very variety of factors. They're going to be social, they're going to be neurobiological, they're going to be psychological, all the above. And that's why it's a cluster concept. That's the best way that in contemporary gender theory, we use the word woman as a cluster concept. The way you use the word woman as an adult being female, that makes no sense. Because, well, what's a female? What's a female?
Oh, you're asking me what's a female?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we can get into that afterwards, but I'm still interested in your position. So,
I think you don't even know what a female is.
I do know what a female is. I just said we will get into it. Why are you being so pedantic? Why are you being so why are you on edge? I told you we will get into it in a second. I'm pressing you on your position right now. You can ask me for my position afterwards. We're not going to dodge. So I'm asking you, or I was going to tell you, I think you're equivocating womanhood and femininity. masculinity and what it means to be a man are not the same thing. You think femininity as defined by being soft, by being presentable, by being submissive, by being demure, and so forth, innocent, all these things that are socially defined. Do you think that this contributes to what it means to be a woman? Am I now less of a woman because I'm not soft, because I'm not submissive?
No, that's not how cluster concepts work, right? If I define a car as a passenger vehicle, it doesn't take away from its carness to say that it's lacking a certain kind of color, or it's lacking a certain kind of door type. That's this in the same sense when we say you're a woman, just because you don't exhibit certain qualities that the other women do, doesn't take away from your womanhood at all. It's because they're both cluster concepts. That's how linguistics works. We don't use essentialism when we're defining things, especially in the case of gender or
I mean, no, we
or
can
cars
use
and trucks.
essentialism. But
Well, you
I'm
can, but
interested.
it fails to take into consideration the social nuances, the neurobiological nuances. It seems like you can't fit that within your worldview.
Yeah, we'll get into that, into my worldview in a moment. But so I guess you're referring to types. So are you referring to some kind of form of like resemblance nominalism?
Yeah, cluster concepts, which
Are
are
you
going to be based
referring to
on
like,
family resemblances.
so are you referring to like prototypes or just resemblance, like similarity?
Either or. Prototypes, you could take a prototypical view. You could also take a cluster concept view, which is what I'm taking, in the sense that womanhood is going to be defined by a variety of traits that are in clusters. In other words, there's no necessary sufficient number of traits you have to be a car. There's no necessary sufficient conditions you have to be a woman.
Okay, I don't think you understand how prototypicals work or resemblance theory, but can you tell me what is the prototypical that makes someone a woman? Like, what is the prototypical for that?
Well, again, womanhood is going to be defined as certain social roles you might fulfill. Like you said before, they're going to be aligned with femininity. In the case of expressions, they're going to be more feminine. They're going to be more caring, or exhibit certain qualities, and that's going to be a typical woman in a typical scenario.
So
But
what
of
is
course,
the
there are
typical woman?
variants. There's a spectrum of different types of people.
Wait. I'm asking you, what is the prototypical? What is the typical instance that we reference?
Womanhood.
Because, for example, yeah. When we're defining,
It's going to be the traits aligned with femininity.
what is femininity to you?
Femininity is exhibiting feminine features.
What are these feminine features? I feel like you're just giving me like an
Caring,
arbitrary.
nurturing. Oh my God, do I have to like give you certain
Yeah,
things?
I do. I do want.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah.
like, it's gonna be like being nurturing, caregiving, having a certain emotional expressiveness,
You don't think that's
cooperation,
sexist?
connection. How is it sexist?
You don't think that's sexist to like reduce
We're
women to
not
being
talking
like?
about sex. We're not talking about sex. How could it be? How could it be?
You don't think that's
sexist?
misogynistic then?
How is it misogynistic?
Devaluation of women, reducing them to just merely nurture or caregiving roles. So being
You think
submissive, being secondary.
you think describing women as feminine is misogynistic?
No, I think you're strawmanning my point now, but that's fine. We're not going to shift from the prototypicality.
How is it
I want to know.
misogynistic?
Wait.
How is it
We're not.
misogynistic?
Whoa, we're not shifting from the prototypicality. I want to know what the typical. Give me the typical. Give me an object reference, right, for what a woman
There
is.
is no one. I don't subscribe to prototype theory. I don't know why you keep doing
You
this.
just said it was a bit of both. You said it was resemblance theory, but prototype theory is an extension of resemblance theory. You're referring to
It's
a particular
resemblance
type?
theory. Yes, it's a cluster concept, a resemblance theory.
Okay, so you're grouping objects by
There's-
similarity.
Yes, by cohesion, by clusters of cohesion and similarity. And
Okay, so
family resemblance.
can you give me the degree of similarity as well as the dimension of similarity for
What do
womanhood?
you mean give the degree? There is no
So
such
you're
degree.
okay.
What's a degree?
We just blundered.
No.
We just blundered.
Let me speak now. What's a degree by which a car is a car and not a truck?
Okay, so I can give you an example, but I think you're subscribing to a view you don't fully
What?
understand,
Go ahead.
right?
Give me the
So
give me
for
the exact
example,
degree. Give me the exact degree.
So, for example, when it comes to resemblance theory, what we're doing is essentially, instead of treating categories as arbitrary, we group them by, or objects by similarity. So we apply a common name to things that resemble each other, and we
Can you
recognize
answer my question? Can you answer my
Can I?
question?
I'm responding. I'm responding. I'm gonna give you an example. I'm gonna give you an example. Can I please explain to my live? It's gonna take at least 2 minutes. You gotta just like let me land. Okay. Anyways, we group objects by similarity, so we'll apply a common name to things that resemble each other, and we recognize new instances by judging whether they are sufficiently similar to the instances we already count as members. So, for example, when we think of triangles, we are not on this view grasping an abstract universal like triangularity. Rather, we think of a particular triangle, and then we generalize. The conclusions we reach about one triangle extend to other sufficiently similar triangles. That's how prototype theory works, and resemblance nominalism works. Now, this connects to that psychological concept of prototypicality. So what this is like, for example, we have studies showing this, that people often classify typical cases faster than atypical ones. So some instances are more typical of a category than others. So the resemblance nominalist, you, for example, this is supposed to be the view that you're holding, can say that a concept is organized around a prototype that is a representative instance, and then we can include new items insofar as they are similar to that prototype. But the issue with your position is that similarity alone is not enough to tell me what that prototype is. It has to be similarity in the right respect to a sufficient degree. So for example, if you don't give me a sufficient degree, or like a degree of hold on, let me finish. I told you 2 minutes. Let me finish. I'm gonna have to mute you, Mike, okay? We're going to look at, for me to know that a triangle is a triangle, why would I not include a square? Why? Because there's a degree of similarity and there's a dimension of similarity.
I agree, there is a degree, but it's not objective. That's my point here. It's culturally decided. It's not, there is no objective necessary condition. No, please let me finish now. Please.
Hold on, I didn't finish. I asked you, I'm gonna need like 2 minutes. I understand, like it's like I'm yapping a lot, but I'm trying to explain to you what I'm really looking for. So if your theory cannot specify the relevant aspect, then in principle, anything can resemble anything. So like, for example, the triangle case that I gave you, imagine like how can you tell me that a triangle is different from a square? You need to give me the relevant degree of similarity and the dimension. So I'm asking you, what is the degree of similarity for your definition and the dimension that is defining womanhood? If you cannot provide that to me, then it is arbitrary and you are falling back into extreme nominalism, and it's circular and regressive.
Yeah, so before I was giving you traits that are typical of women, right? Nurturing qualities, emotional expressiveness, things like that. That's going to be the prototypical case of womanhood, and then everything from that is going to extend indexical with femininity. And then if it gets far enough, hold on, let me speak. If it gets far away enough from that, which is going to be culturally contextual, then that person will not be a woman. Then identity becomes something different. Non-binary, woman, man, whatever, right? So that's the answer. Now, my answer back to you is, if you don't take a resemblance theory, then what's the objective difference? The exclusive trait that only cars can have that trucks can't have. Can you name that trait?
Okay, again. We're not pressing me, I'm pressing you, because I asked you the question, you
have yet to answer it.
No, you have yet to answer it. You have yet to answer it. I'm asking you, you did not answer my question. What is the dimension for womanhood? What is the dimension of similarity that is relevant to being a woman? What is the dimension? Do you know what a dimension is?
It's multifaceted. It's a cluster concept. Do you know what that is?
That's fine. It can be a cluster concept, but I'm asking you, what are the dimensions?
Okay, great. So cluster concepts invoke various different types of features and qualities.
I understand that, yeah.
Within a category of object. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Great. So it's not one trait I'm going to name you. Do you agree?
Okay, so what is the dimension? Can you tell me the dimension?
The dimension is going to be indexical to feminized traits.
Okay.
Like I just mentioned
before. If that's your dimension, how do you choose those traits and features?
How do I choose those traits? I don't know if you choose all of them. I think you just exhibit some of them.
Oh, so it's arbitrary?
I didn't choose my hair color. I didn't choose my hair color. I didn't
No, how do you choose which how do you choose which traits fall into femininity?
Oh, how do we choose what traits fall into femininity? Oh yeah, that's a good question. It's called culture. It's called culturally contextual.
Depends on the culture.
Of course, words are arbitrary. The way we define words are arbitrary. If I go into another country, what a woman is going to be different from what a woman is in this country. It's going to be slightly culturally contextual.
Okay, so but
You
when
didn't
it
know that?
comes
You didn't know
to
that words are
okay,
you didn't know that
so
definitions are arbitrary?
I love the rhetoric, but I'm asking you, when we're talking about a term, we need to be able to track a relevant feature, and it needs to be able to track. It needs to be clear. Language needs to be clear. We need clarity. We need to be
It
concise. So
is
forth.
clear. I gave you a
So
clear definition.
I'm asking you, how do you choose which traits? If this is so you're telling me, wait, so if you're telling me like some misogynistic societies, like some in the East, that have some kind of idea of what it means to be feminine, right? This is going to define what it means to be a woman, what defines femininity.
Yep, in their culture, yes. In their
Wait,
culture,
sorry,
what
you
they
cut out.
deem
Can
a
you repeat
woman
that?
is going to be culturally contextual based on their definition. Yep.
Wait, sorry, can you repeat that? You cut out for a second.
Everybody's culture is going to have a different version of what women are.
So you don't have an actual metric defining your definition of what it means to be a woman.
I don't know what that means, actual metric.
Yeah, you don't have an actual.
I've given you several metrics that are, and I said they are culturally contextual. If you don't know, if you can't even grasp that,
No,
I'm going
I've
to start
grasped it.
pressuring
I've
you
grasped
to
it.
answer me then.
I've
Why the
grasped
heck
it. I've
are you
grasped
not
it. It
taking
just
standard
seems
numbers
like
theory?
I've grasped it, but it seems like, oh, the reason why I don't take resemblance theory is for a plethora of reasons. Mostly because if you actually know what resemblance theory is, then you would know it treats similarity as something primitive. It's not necessarily analyzed further. So similarity is taken as something. When it's taken as primitive, it's taken as like an unanalyzed relation. So resemblance nominalism doesn't actually explain how concepts get their boundaries, which is what you're not doing. You're proving my point. You're not explaining to me how these concepts are getting
The
their boundaries. You're making them completely. You're making them completely arbitrary, right? And you don't have an actual definition for it, and you can't hold on, and you can't explain the relevance and its sufficiency, and therefore you are collapsing. Wait. Therefore, you're collapsing back into extreme conventionalist nominalism, where categorization essentially becomes like effectively arbitrary. That's not a straw man. That's not a straw man.
I gotta be able to speak. Can I speak? There, of course, are boundaries. There are boundaries between what a man is and what a woman is. There are boundaries, but they're fuzzy boundaries, and they're culturally contextual boundaries. They're not objective boundaries. So, if you believe that there are objective boundaries, what's the objective boundary between a car and a truck?
I like how you're moving this to me again.
No, we're gonna pressure you now.
No. I swear to God. Hold on. I swear to God. Once we get to the 1 hour,
you now. We're gonna pressure.
Wait, you're burden shifting. You're burden shifting. You're literally burden shifting. You're literally burden shifting. You're literally burden shifting. You're burden shifting. You really are.
Why this is a reductio?
You're burden shifting. Okay. This is not a reductio.
A reductio.
Okay, this is not a reductio.
Let me give it to you.
Listen. Okay. Let me give you a better. Since you want a fucking answer. Oh my God. Wait. No. Since you want a fucking example, I gave you. I'm not pivoting. You're running. You're literally running. Listen. Since you want a fucking example so bad, okay. I don't know too much about cars or trucks, okay? I don't know anything about them, okay? So you asking me about cars, I can't really give you an answer. But if you ask me about triangles, right? What makes something a triangle under nominalism, right? I could hold on. Let me finish. I'm answering. Oh my God, I'm answering.
What is the objective boundary between cars and trucks?
Mike, I'm answering. I don't know too much.
You're gonna
Mike,
answer
I'm
my
answering.
question.
Mike, I'm answering. I'm answering your burden shifting, and I'm granting you that burden shift because you want to dodge and you don't have an actual framework to your prototype nominalism. So I'm gonna let you run away. Hold on, let me finish. I'm gonna let you finish. Hold on. Okay, Mike, I need to mute you now because you're not gonna stop. Let me finish speaking. I'm answering your question. I told you I can't tell you the objective boundary about a car and a truck because I don't know anything about cars or trucks. I'm conceding on that. I don't know anything about cars or trucks. I couldn't even tell you like how a fucking engine. I couldn't even stop. I can't tell. I couldn't even stop. I can't tell you the difference between a car and a truck because I don't know the difference between a car and a truck. However, I can tell you the difference. However, I can tell you the difference between a triangle and a square under your theory, right? Under prototype nominalism, I can determine what a triangle is, right? Not just based off of similarity, because that's not a good metric. I need the dimension of similarity, which would be the relevant shape,
its color or its function. So like, for example, we define a triangle by having 3 sides in certain kinds of degrees. I don't remember the exact degree, but we have a particular degree that it needs to meet, and it needs to have 3 sides, right? And then I can also have a rule of similarity,
Okay.
right?
So now what's the objective boundary? No, let me speak now, please. What's the objective boundary between men and women?
Okay, so now you want to get into my view.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, we can get, I told you earlier, you can press me as...
Where's the objective boundary between men and women? Let's hear it.
You're so weird,
give
bro.
The trait.
You're so weird, bro.
Give the trait.
Listen.
Answer it. Answer the question. Give the trait.
Okay.
Give the trait. Give the trait.
Okay, when you calm down, I'll respond. Have you calmed down?
You're pivoting. You're pivoting.
No,
you're stalling. You're stalling.
Mike, stop interrupting, Mike. This is like really classless. You don't speak like this with men, which I find is really funny. You don't speak like this. Hold on, I'm gonna mute you again. You don't speak like this with men. When you're on panels with males, you are respectful of them speaking, but when you come and debate me, you are being incredibly disrespectful. You're being rhetorical. You're disparaging me and so forth, and you're mocking me. So let me respond to you. I'm trying to respond to you. You're pivoting. You're burden shifting to me. I told you I have no issue with you investigating my position. Let's just finish investigating yours. I'm gonna give this max 10 more minutes, and then we can move to mine, because I was gonna say around the 1 hour mark is when we can shift to mine. Okay, so I'm still asking you about your position, which you have yet to substantiate for me and prove to me that you have you're tracking a relevant feature, and that you can give me reasons as to why you're giving these boundaries. You're just stating arbitrary boundaries, and you're not giving me reasons as to why these need to be the boundaries or why they're relevant. You're making categories purely conventional.
Why is that wrong?
It is wrong under prototype nominalism, because when you make categories...
why is that
Hold on,
bad?
let me finish speaking. Oh my gosh, Mike, let me finish speaking. I'm answering your question. You asked me why is it wrong? Because you don't understand prototype nominalism. What you are referring to is actually extreme conventionalist nominalism. When you provide arbitrary boundaries, this is conventionalist nominalism. It's not resemblance theory. In order for it to be resemblance theory, you need to provide me the degree of similarity and the the dimension of similarity, and you also need to give me reasons as to why those boundaries are relevant. You have yet to provide that for me, and if you cannot provide that for me without saying, oh, well, it just depends on the society and it's purely conventional, that means you are falling back into something regressive, which is conventionalist nominalism, which is distinct from resemblance theory. Do you understand?
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
All right. Yeah, I just don't see anything wrong with having conventional categories that are designated by cultures. I don't know why that's incorrect.
Okay, so if you are going on a purely conventionalist route, okay, and you are not sticking to resemblance nominalism, because if you're going purely conventional, that is not resemblance or prototypical nominalism, then that means that you don't have a way of identifying new instances. That's the issue with conventionalist nominalism, because categorization becomes purely arbitrary, and it's unclear how do we identify a new instantiation or a new instance of an object. Can I finish speaking?
Be arbitrary. Why can't they be arbitrary?
Because you can't identify new instances.
Why not?
Because you don't have a relevant feature that you're tracking.
We are.
There's no principled fact of the matter. Wait, there's no principled fact. Can I finish speaking? The reason why you can't identify new instances is because there's no principled fact of the matter. Membership is going to depend entirely on private stipulation, and so these concepts become wholly subjective, and classification loses a stable and learnable criterion. That is the issue. Your definition is not stable, and it's not learnable. It's not consistent.
Why is it wrong? Why is it wrong to have subjective categories?
Because it's not stable, and you can't identify new instances.
It's not stable?
Yes. Don't you agree? You agreed. Wait. You agreed earlier that language should be stable. It should be concise. It should have clarity. So if your definition does not provide clarity, does not provide stability, I don't know why you're making that face. You just don't understand nominalism.
Okay. So obviously,
if you understand nominalism, can you define?
I can't speak. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Fine.
All
okay.
Right.
Whatever.
So
Okay, go.
Obviously, when we categorize things, we're using certain features and qualities that are going to have a family resemblance in a cluster concept, right?
Okay.
So just because I can't give you the objective degree by which these boundaries are, it doesn't mean that there aren't boundaries that are subjective, and there's
I'm
nothing
not
wrong with
asking you
subjective
for
boundaries. There's nothing
no,
wrong
no,
with subjective boundaries.
Okay, if you cannot provide me with objective, quote unquote objective, I don't know what you're referring to when you say objective. If you cannot provide me with a degree of similarity and the dimension of similarity and why they are relevant boundaries, then that falls back into arbitrary convention, right? It is conventional, and therefore it is no longer resemblance theory, it is conventionalist nominalism.
The boundaries
you are not
going
adhering
to be identical to femininity and certain behaviors and certain psychological traits and certain
You said it is subjective
traits.
To societies, and it's purely
Yes,
conventional.
subjective
So that means it is
what woman
okay,
is.
Mike, that's fine, but you are adhering to conventionalist nominalism, which is inherently inconsistent and unstable. Like, that is the definition of the theory.
Well, where is the inconsistency?
Because you can't identify new instances. You can't track the relevant feature. How do we track objects in language if you can't track the new instances?
What do you mean new instances?
Like for example,
object?
Okay. Let's say I take the city of Chicago, I take a green truck, and I take a green tree. I take a truck and I take a green tree, or grass, whatever. Grass is green. And I put it under the name of Gruck. And then let's say I show you another object. Let's say I show you a cup and I ask you, is it a Gruck? Can you tell me whether or not it's a Gruck? I show you a cup. Is it a Gruck?
It's green. You said I'm so confused.
Okay,
say it again. I'm sorry.
I group together trees, trucks, and the city of Chicago, and I call them Grucks. And I show you a cup or a bottle, and I ask you, is this a Gruck? Do you think it's a Gruck or no? It's not a trick question.
Oh. If you say those are the things that make something a Gruck, then no.
How do you know?
But it's not a Gruck.
Wait. How do you know? How do you know?
Because you said these are the things that are Grucks. Cups are not those things.
No. You're misunderstanding. The reason why we don't know whether or not it's a Gruck is because we can't track the relevant feature. We don't know what relevant feature makes Chicago or makes trees or makes trucks a Gruck. We don't know what it is. We're just calling it a Gruck, and we're just grouping it under a Gruck because it's purely conventional, purely socially conceptualized, just what I want to define a Gruck as. The same way that some societies just want to define femininity as something completely arbitrary and based off of their culture. It's the same thing. It's purely conventional.
We're not saying that femininity is arbitrary. We're saying that what is a woman is arbitrary.
Our femininity wait, but you are using femininity and womanhood interchangeably, like the whole live.
No, this is where the confusion is. No, I never said that femininity equals woman. We're saying
then
that
what is the relevance of talking about femininity?
Because women typically have feminine features.
Okay.
So we're basing it on typicalities.
Yeah, I don't think you understand. I don't think you understand nominalism, either resemblance nominalism or conventionalist nominalism. My point here is that when you make it purely arbitrary, when you make it purely subjective, you can't track relevant features. It's not stable. You lose clarity.
Okay. Now, can I press you now? Can I press you now?
Yeah, sure.
Great. What's the objective boundary between men and women?
You don't want to start with my definition and so forth, so we can provide stipulative definitions and so forth?
No. Answer the question.
Then how would you understand what I define as a woman?
Just can you answer the question, please? Stop stalling.
I can't. I mean, I'm not stalling. I'm just let's start from the beginning. I'm not a nominalist. I don't know why you're asking me what's the objective.
Can you answer the fucking question? Can you please answer the fucking question? Okay. Answer the question.
I don't know why you're yelling at me. Okay. That was kind of scary. Yeah, so what I define a woman as is just going to be an adult human female. And this female category is going to be defined by homeostatic property clusters. And then the reason why I adhere to the definition of an adult human female, or at least something with a biological or sex-based core, is because I'm going to be appealing to common usage or ordinary usage.
So sex is also a cluster concept in your view?
That is the biological definition of sex. That's
So
how
you agree
biologically that's how we
you
determine
take
what.
the same view of, so you
No,
think
I don't.
sex is a cluster concept just as yeah, you do.
No. You think woman is a cluster concept. I don't agree on that.
You think sex is a cluster concept.
Yeah, because biologically that's how it's defined.
Great. So you agree that there's no objective trait that all females have that males can't have, right?
No, not necessarily.
So what's the trait that only males have that
I think you
females can't
misunderstand how homeostatic property clusters work. Can you tell me what a homeostatic property cluster is?
No. Stop with the fancy nonsense.
I'm not.
Answer
Wait,
the
it's not
question.
fancy. It's biology. I can explain it to you.
What is the
Here,
trait?
I don't think you know. Wait, you don't know what homeostatic property clusters are. So
What
let me
is the
explain it to you.
trait?
Wait, I'm explaining to you my view. I'm explaining to you my view. Let me explain to you my view. You don't understand it. There's no point. Like, you're just asking me questions because you're trying to, like, be rhetoric and pedantic. Let me explain to you my view, and you can engage with it in good faith. So the reason why I'm taking the word female is inherently grounded in a biological definition. So when we talk about female, it's referring to something sex-based, so inherently pertaining to biology. Now, within biology and the scientific method and philosophy of biology, we possess methods of sorting objects into different kinds and categories. Particularly in the case of biology, we use homeostatic property clusters. This is fundamentally how we developed the phylogenetic tree that we have now in taxonomy and so forth. This is based on homeostatic property clusters. And so we use the same thing for females. These categories function as a natural
What is the trait? What is the trait? Name the trait that males can't have that only females can.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
So you agree that there is no trait that only females have, and so that they're arbitrary.
No, they're not arbitrary.
So then what's the trait that only males can have that females can't have?
It doesn't need to have only one trait.
Oh, okay. So you agree that
No. Mine. The difference is that
males-
wait. Mine isn't.
that
Wait.
males can have any kind of female.
Hold
trait,
on.
right?
You're misunderstanding. You're trying to use my own argument against me. One, you're misunderstanding. I'm not a nominalist. Second of all, I'm also not just justifying it purely based off of conventional standards and subjective standards, right? What subjective means is I personally define it a certain way. Like, for example, someone in Afghanistan defines femininity in one way, and someone in America defines femininity in another way. This is a private stipulation that can't extend beyond how I privately define it, and therefore it is purely conventional and it's arbitrary and it falls into infinite regress or circularity. That is why conventionalist nominalism and resemblance nominalism is problematic. However, homeostatic property clusters are not inherently nominalist. Okay? And then, second of all, there's no necessary sufficient condition. I never claimed that there was. There's
Great.
candidate properties.
We agree that there does not have to be necessary sufficient conditions to be a woman.
No.
No one, in other words, you're in agreement with me?
No, I'm not in agreement with you.
Oh,
I just explained to you why it's not the same thing.
Have to be necessary
I just explained it to you. I just explained to you. I just explained to you why. Wait, I just explained to you. I'm answering you. I just explained to you. I just explained to you. I just explained to you. No, I just explained to you why it is not the same as your position. Your position is purely conventional and purely subjective. I am not a nominalist. I do not believe that it's based on private stipulation. The objective definition of a female is something sex-based. Yes or no?
Yeah. Now,
okay, so if it is, I'm trying to explain to you my position because you don't understand my position. You're asking me questions that aren't relevant. So yes, if it is sex-based, what is wait? What does sex-based? What does sex-based refer to? It refers to biology, correct? So biologically, the way that we classify and categorize things or sort objects into categories is by homeostatic property clusters. There is no necessary or sufficient. There's no necessary sufficient condition that we have. We have candidate properties. We have candidate properties for the cluster.
Right. So you agree that there is no necessary sufficient condition for being a female?
No. But homeostatic property clusters are not
homeostatic
property clusters.
Necessary sufficient condition. So then what is
there isn't. Let me explain to you. You don't understand. You don't understand.
So
no, I didn't.
You're being contradictory.
Okay.
So let's try this again. Let's get a straight answer. Is there a necessary and sufficient condition for being female? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. So then
they have candidate properties.
So there doesn't have to be a necessary sufficient condition for being a woman.
If they have candidate properties.
Yes or no?
Do you know what a candidate property is?
Yeah.
You don't even know what I'm saying. You don't even know what I'm saying.
I don't have to know what you're saying. This is
What?
yes or no question for you.
How are
This
you
is yes or no
engaging?
question.
Wait, how are you engaging
It's
with my
irrelevant. It's
position?
irrelevant
Wait, how
to
are you?
my
Wait. It is though. How are you engaging with my position in good faith if you don't know what I'm saying? I just muted you. I'm asking you, how are you engaging with my position in good faith if you don't know what I'm saying?
Answer my question. Does there have to be a necessary sufficient condition for being a woman?
No, I just said no.
Okay. In my
Oh,
view,
sorry.
No.
No. Sorry, no. There's no necessary and sufficient condition for being female. I'm referring to what female is right now. We're defining female, not woman.
Okay. Does there have to be a necessary condition, sufficient condition for being woman the way I view womanhood?
Yes, I think it is necessary for you to be female.
Why? Why are you special pleading?
Because I'm basing it off of common usage.
Oh, okay. So now you're basing it on common usage. Well,
yes, because I think
guess
that's
what?
relevant.
The way do you think we commonly refer to women based on their fucking sex organs?
Ooh, this is so fun. This is so fun. Yes. Let me explain to you why.
We don't base women based on their sex organs. We base women off of other features like
this is so fun. This is so fun. Okay. This is my shit. Okay, so what's your evidence that we don't commonly base it off of that?
Because when I walk around the street and I
So you
go,
don't have
this
evidence.
person's a woman, can I speak?
This is like anecdotal. I want to study. Let me study.
Can I speak now, please? Okay.
Okay.
When you walk around the street, most people don't look under your pants or look at your chromosomes or look at your gametes and go, oh, this person must be a woman. They don't do that. We commonly use the word woman to refer to secondary characteristics. Your expressions.
I disagree with that, but
okay, so then give me an instance.
I disagree with that. So I disagree. I disagree with that. I disagree with the understanding that we don't. No. I disagree. I disagree. Hold on. We have sex tracking mechanisms, like evolutionary mechanisms that we develop to understand that these mechanisms are co-occurring within biology. Like, for example, having primary sex characteristics, hormonal baselines, and so forth. These are co-occurring mechanisms. So when I see someone with breasts and typical female features, I presume that they likely also have primary sex characteristics that are associated with being female. Now, I'm asking you for what is your substantiation as to why the common usage would not be something biological or have a sex-based core.
Because when we commonly refer to women,
I want evidence.
We don't talk about people's sex organs when we talk about their womanhood or manhood.
Okay, prove it to me.
We're referring to other things.
Do you have a poll? Do you have a study? Anything?
Do you have a poll or study that the way we use the word commonly is your usage?
Yeah, we have BERT models. Do you know what BERT is?
Yeah, show me the study that says we.
Wait, do you know what BERT is? I asked you a question. Do you know what BERT is?
I don't know who BERT is. Can you just give me the study?
It's not a person. Okay, so the strongest. Okay, so the strongest way to substantiate common usage is not by actually asking people what they think they mean, like surveys or polls or what you might intuitively believe that most people believe, because that's just biased, right? That's not studies, that's not statistics, it's not actually analyzing things scientifically. So the way that we do this is by analyzing how people actually use the term across large bodies of text. So for me personally, my substantiation of common usage will involve a corpus-based approach. So essentially, I'm using contextual language modeling and word sense methods. So this is like we use BERT-based contextual embeddings, and what these are, and word clusterings, and disambiguation. And what this is, BERT model was constructed by Google. It's an AI model that essentially, if I give it a piece of text, it'll read the text from left to right and right to left and determine the contextual usage of a particular word, and then match its definition to, match the contextual definition to its dictionary definition, and then determine the similarity of the word, right? So are we actually using the term in accordance with its its dictionary definition or its contextual usage? So for example, I can code a model, which I am currently coding a large based model with a large data set, to determine whether or not woman is actually commonly used within the social context. And based off of the small model that I've built, and I used it across languages, translating languages, because English is not the only language that people speak, right? We have people across the world. You know, you're a white man, you speak English, but there's other people in the world, right? I would argue that it's intuitive, not just intuitive, but also statistically true, that most people across the world, not just in America, use the term woman with a sex-based core.
Okay, great. So you think that most people, when they refer to women, they're referring to their gametes?
What makes you think that when I say sex, I'm referring to just gametes?
So what do you mean by female?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain earlier and you wouldn't let me. So are we going back to that?
Go ahead and answer it now. What's a female?
Okay, so let's go back to the homeostatic property clusters. So homeostatic property clusters and what makes someone a female is going to be based off of candidate properties. So for the female cluster, typical candidate properties that we would have to put them into this category is gametogenic and reproductive organization. So this would involve orientation towards overproduction, developmental pathways associated with being female, reproductive anatomy. And then the second one would be the typical reproductive anatomy, which would be uterus, ovaries, vaginal canal patterns, so forth, large gametes, which you were referring to. The third one would be typical developmental endocrinology, so the hormonal environment or the hormonal baseline or developmental cascades that co-occur
Okay, great.
with...
So
Wait, I'm not finished! I'm not finished! I'm not finished! Let me finish! Let me finish! I'm gonna mute you, Mike. Let me finish. You don't ask me something and then not let me finish. Okay? So we have the developmental cascades that co-occur with female phenotypes. Okay, so this is necessary for gene regulation and expression, especially when it comes to reproductive anatomy. We don't have gene expression and regulation of these reproductive organs and features without the developmental endocrinology. We also have secondary sex characteristics. I think that's kind of intuitive. And then genetic development, so the relevant X-linked traits and relevant autosomal traits that result in female expression.
Great. So you think most people take all that into consideration when they say you're a woman?
I think people. Okay, so for example, why are you laughing?
You think most people use that usage? They don't.
You didn't even let me answer.
We look at somebody's breast. We look at their boobs. We look at their fucking face.
Okay, yeah. So that's kind of.
We don't use any of that lingo you just mentioned. Okay, so we don't use Bert's model. Fuck Bert. Okay. You can't just say fuck Bert. You can't just say fuck Bert because you don't like it. You don't. Okay, you're going back to common usage. You're going back to the common usage. Can you? You're losing it, bro. You're losing it, bro. Can you calm down? Can you? No. You're tweaking out. Okay, so I'm gonna finish speaking because you won't let me finish, right? Keep muting me.
I am gonna mute you. You're tweaking out. You're tweaking out.
You know, you said you wouldn't, even though you said you wouldn't.
Because you're tweaking out. Maybe this is why people mute you.
Because you don't know how to fucking debate.
You have anger issues.
The answer is
I'm gonna be frank with you right now. If you speak to me in that tone again, we're not doing this anymore. Lose the anger issues. Stop speaking to me in a degrading tone. Just talk to me normally. You're fine to get frustrated. I understand getting annoyed.
I just simply said you don't know how to debate. I said you don't know how to debate.
You have gotten aggressive with me twice this live. Listen, Mike, you don't know how to debate either. You burden shift a lot. If we want, we can both have our critiques of how we debate, but I'm asking you to stop being disrespectful with me because if you're going to continue, we're not going to continue this debate. You are very patronizing.
I don't think I haven't been disrespectful, but okay.
Okay.
So the reason why this is, I just showed you why it's silly to think that people use that take all that into consideration when they deem somebody a woman. We look at their boobs. We look at their face. That's how we typically consider their womanhood, on a face value. But the point is that when we deem somebody a woman or man, I think there's more to womanhood than just your sex organs. There's more to womanhood than just your gametes. There's more to my manhood than let me speak. It's my turn.
I just said okay.
There's more to manhood than just my penis or my gametes or my small gamete production. There's more to manhood than that. That's why contemporary gender theorists don't use your definition of woman, because it's silly, it's outdated. Whether it's commonly used or not. Why the fuck should we care if it's commonly used when there's a better definition that better encapsulates the nuance in psychology and biology?
So you're making
I have shown you.
Now you're making a normative claim. You're making a normative claim. We're talking about descriptive.
Now you want to sit there. Yeah, we can make a normative case for using.
We're not talking about what ought to be.
Yes, we can make a normative case for why we should use the word woman the way I do. Yes.
I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying that's not relevant to the discussion. I'm talking about what is. I'm not talking about what.
It's very relevant because the way we use words can save people's lives.
We're talking about Wait, Mike, the proposition that you are affirming is that trans women are women, not that trans women ought to be women, okay? That's not the proposition that we're debating.
That's a complete straw man. So yes,
that's not a straw man. You just admitted you're making a normative claim. We're not talking about normative claims.
I'm making a normative case for why we should use the word woman. I do.
Okay, I don't care about your normative case. I'm caring about your argument. I care about your argument as to why trans women are.
Can I just speak for a second? Okay.
Listen, I'm just telling you, I don't care about your normative claim. We're debating the proposition trans women are women.
Do you care that people's lives are saved?
Okay, this is a normative claim. I want to respond to your questions before you get into
Oh my
this.
god! Oh my god!
Wait, I want to respond. You made points earlier. You made points earlier. I'm not pivoting. If anything, I'm trying to actually engage with what you're asking me, rather than you like overwhelming me with a bunch of questions, and then when I don't answer them, you're gonna act like I'm dodging. So I'm actually trying to answer your questions. I'm trying to answer your questions. I'm trying to answer your questions. I'm trying to stop talking. Stop talking. Seriously. Oh my god, you have issues. So the first question or the first claim that you made was that we define woman by, you know, these outward characteristics, by what the common observer is looking at. Okay? Common observer would refer to what the argument you're making is about the common.
That's a straw man.
Oh my god, that's not a straw man. You're talking about the common observer. Oh my god, you don't understand philosophy. When you're talking about the common observer, how people commonly observe people and what they infer.
You gotta stop muting me. You gotta stop muting me, please.
Oh my god, you're not letting me respond to your points.
I never said we define women based on observers in terms of those two
but
features.
You don't understand philosophy.
It's
what you were implicitly
I'm saying
oh my god, Mike, what you were implicitly referring to is the common observer. You did not directly say it, but you are implicitly referring to common. Let me explain to you. You don't understand philosophy. That's fine. Okay? I'm telling you, you're implying
you can say that I don't understand you're implicitly, but I can't tell you that.
I'm not talking about debate. I'm talking about philosophy. Debate and philosophy are two different things. You don't know the content of what you're talking about.
You can say I don't know something, but I can't tell you that.
You're implicit. That was not the issue. That's not the issue that I had. You were being incredibly like. Anyways, that's not the point. Listen. When you say we define women by these outward characteristics that we observe, like for example, boobs.
That's not what I said either.
Wait. I haven't finished. You can call me. You can say I'm strawmanning.
And listen to me.
Oh my god. I can't do this. Stop. Let me finish. This is crazy. Like I'm like, look, I don't like to scream like this. It feels very classless. I don't like to do this, and I don't want to yell. Let's just be respectful, okay? You said that when people look at other people, like for example, someone with breast and female typical characteristics, the waist to hip ratio, secondary sex characteristics, and so forth, and things that indicate primary sex characteristics, they are going to infer that they are a woman. Why? Because they cannot see their genitalia. You are implicitly making the philosophical claim that that the common observer looks at secondary sex characteristics and outward features and then infers their sex or whether or not they're a woman. And I don't agree with that. That's what I was trying to say here. I don't agree with that is because for two reasons. One, I don't think that because people see breasts and stuff like that, they think of because they can't see their primary sex characteristics and a lot of the other things that I mentioned, like sex traits and so forth, just because they can't see these things doesn't mean that they don't know they are a woman. The reason why I say this is because biologically, 99% of the time, we have people that either fall into male or female. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if they are male or female, then that likely means, especially healthy males or females, it likely means that they have the co-occurring biological mechanisms. That means everything else I already mentioned. So we know that breasts and all these features that are associated with female typical body plans arise from these primary sex characteristics and these primary features like genetics and autosomal traits and X-linked traits and so forth. So these aren't just arbitrary. When I look at someone with a breast and these female typical body plans, I'm inferring that they're biologically female because that's where it arises from biologically. So I don't agree with that. And then second of all, the point that I wanted to make about, just because I see a woman, like, for example, if I see a cup of alcohol, right? Not alcohol in terms of like the drinking alcohol, like rubbing alcohol, right? If I see a cup of alcohol and I infer that it's water, does that now mean that it's water? I think you're muted.
You want me to answer, or am I muted still?
I want to know, do you think that just because I look at a cup of alcohol and I think it is water, does that now mean it's water?
I have no idea how the fuck that's even remotely relevant to this fucking debate. I have no idea why the fuck that's relevant. No, I don't believe that. I never fucking said that.
Okay, so you believe that.
Let's try listening to me now, okay? Let's try listening to me now.
Do you want to know why I asked you that?
Because I don't know why you asked that. Because you just don't understand my view. Because you're not listening to my view. You just keep talking over me. You just keep talking. All right, go ahead.
Okay, the reason why I brought that up, why if you saw alcohol in a cup, okay, and it's not water, means that there is some kind of definition beyond water that is not just some kind of typical trait or some kind of similarity, which is what you are inferring. You are inferring that the common the common observer or the common user of the term woman is looking towards some kind of typical trait, something that they typically observe, or some kind of similarity that is outward, whereas I'm disagreeing with you. I don't think that we define things based off of their outward appearance and their typical traits or similarity.
Me neither. I never said that. So
but that's
again,
that's what prototypical nominalism is.
If I could just speak, I could explain it to you. I never said we define women based on their breasts. I never said that. I said that's how we commonly refer to people, by looking at their outward expressions. I never said that we define. No, let me speak. I never said we define womanhood based on breasts and just their outward expressions. I said it's multifaceted. There are psychological components to womanhood. There's sociological components. There's a neurobiological component to womanhood. And all of those have to be considered before we deem somebody a woman or not. So that's my argument. It's also the case that there's an ethical case to be made here for why we should use the word woman the way I do and contemporary gender theorists do. It helps save lives. When you reject my definition, you say, woman is just adult human female, you're now ostracizing a whole group of people by the millions, telling them that they're invalid, that they're nothing, that they don't belong as who they are,
Okay,
and therefore they shouldn't get, and that would inspire people to not do gender affirming care. We live in a world where people who are Muslim and Islamic and Christian, they are anti-LGBT fundamentally, and so they are actively against gender affirming care, actively trying to take away their lives.
I'm not against gender affirming care.
Okay, great. But the point is that typically people that have your position are in favor of laws that would render trans women not women, which would heavily influence their rights, heavily influence their treatment as women.
Two things. One, I don't have an issue.
The point is that there's an ethical case to be made here. It's such that we should use the word woman the way I do because it actually saves people's lives. Gender affirming care saves lives. The way we use the word doesn't. That doesn't mean just because I say more people would die if you were to rule the world.
Just because I don't think that they are categorized philosophically as women doesn't mean that I don't think that they're entitled to gender affirming care, that they're not entitled to a space within society, that their gender dysphoria is not real, that their suffering is not real. I believe all of these things. Hold on. You're assuming my position because you've had some experience. You're assuming my position because you've had a negative experience with people who are transphobic and believe that they shouldn't be entitled to gender affirming care.
The evidence shows.
What evidence shows that I don't agree with gender affirming care?
Let me speak. The evidence shows that when we reject trans people as their identity, that they say they are, that they have, it leads to negative consequences to their mental health. When we reject people and ostracize them from our society, it leads to negative consequences to their health. And so by you even just asserting that trans women are not women is negatively affecting people. Just because you are for gender affirming care doesn't mean that the way you use the word is actually beneficial for people. The way I use the word is beneficial. It's proven to be the case. And so my entire argument is not just based on the neuroscience. It's also based on ethics. It's also based on linguistics.
I think
and that's why trans women are absolutely women because of all these reasons combined.
Okay, I think your definition is actually not helpful. I think if anything, it's harmful by the fact that you reinforce that these subjective definitions of what it means to be femininity within potential societies that are misogynistic and sexist and so forth would be a valid definition of femininity.
There's
regardless,
I
want to regardless. Hold on, regardless. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get. Mike, stop. Let me finish. I let you finish. I let you talk. I let you talk. Stop. I'm muting you again. Okay, I do not want to mute you. Please stop. I let you talk, okay? I do not want to get into the normative claim. The proposition here is something descriptive. I want to understand how you currently believe woman is defined, not how it ought to be defined. We can get into that afterwards, okay? We can do like 5 more minutes of my position and then we can get into the normative claim if you want. But I want to stick to what we believe I think it is and what you think it is, not what I think it ought to be and what you think it ought to be, okay? And back to your point, the reason why I brought up the water thing is because you were saying, well, do you think we all know that women have all these genes and properties and so forth, these candidate properties that make them female? No, but we still know that they are a woman based off of other characteristics that arise from those things. And the reason why that's relevant to the water example I gave is because even though I'm looking at a cup of, clear liquid, in spite of it being alcohol, I know that it is not water, and it is not true for me to call it water because it's not made of. Hold on. I'm not strawmanning. I'm explaining my position. Stop. Oh my God. Like when I get close to landing, you interrupt me. Okay? When it comes to water, right? The reason why I look at a cup of alcohol and I can't say that it is water just based off of how it physically looks, right? The reason why I can't say that is because I understand that fundamentally it's made up of H2O. In spite of the fact that you can't see that water is made up of H2O, you're not, running tests and looking at its chemical properties and so forth and mixing it with other things to confirm that it is indeed water, right? You're not doing that, but you still know that water is made up of H2O even though you can't see it. That was my point with that. Now, the second thing that you asked me,
because we don't define water based on how it looks. I never said that. So
that is my point. That is my point, Mike. That is my point.
But that's not my point. That is never.
That is the reason why, Mike. The reason. Hold on. You're not Mike. Mike. You're not Mike. You're not understanding my position. The reason why I brought up the water is because the water, okay. In the same way, when it comes to being a woman, I don't need to see a woman's biological properties, like her primary sex characteristics or her genes, autosomal or X-linked, to know she is indeed a female. The same way, I don't need to go look at the chemical. Wait, I don't. The same way, I don't need to look at water. The same way, I don't need to look. The same way, the same way, I don't need to look at the chemical property of water to know it is H2O.
How do you know somebody's a female?
Because there are co-occurring mechanisms that allow me to infer.
No.
I'm answering.
No, that's not my question. Let me say it again. How do you know somebody's a female just by looking at them?
Okay, based off of induction, which is what biology uses, there is no such thing as deduction in this case because it.
Okay, so let me explain.
Let me respond. Mike, you're gonna have to let me respond. You have to let me respond. Okay?
I wasn't done.
It is going. Let me finish. No, you asked me to answer a question, so let me answer it. I know what you're asking me. Let me respond. So inductively, we're always going to use induction when it comes to this. Okay, so there's never going to be 100% certainty. So we're presuming, right? I can look at someone's outward characteristics and presume that they are indeed female because they have co-occurring mechanisms. These co-occurring mechanisms give rise to secondary sex characteristics, such as waist to hip ratio, breasts, things of that nature, hair, whatever it may be that is associated with being female outwardly, right? These co-occurring mechanisms. And I assume that if this person has these outward features, that they also likely, statistically, also have primary sex characteristics and the relevant X-linked or autosomal features. If you ask most people, and this is why I bring up common usage, which you didn't allow me to substantiate that even though you asked about it, the reason why I bring up common usage is I think most people, if you ask them, not just Americans and not just white people, if you ask them, if you show them someone who's trans and is passing and they look like a typical female person, typical female body plan, and then you tell them they're not actually biologically female, that they don't have the relevant features, that is like primary sex characteristics and X-linked traits and autosomal traits, most people would no longer consider them to be a woman.
Okay, so to make it simplified, since you just yapped the entire time, you think that somebody is a woman or a female because of certain secondary sex characteristics. So,
no.
Are those just as good indicators as to gender as it is to their sex?
No, you misunderstood my position. I can reiterate it again.
Do you agree that you can induce the fact that somebody's a female based on secondary sex characteristics?
I can infer that they are likely female, yeah.
Okay, so that means it's just as good of an indicator.
No.
As you use it for sex, just as it is for gender, right?
No.
Why wouldn't it be?
Because I just explained to you the biological homeostatic property cluster, the way HPCs, the way that they work. You can't just have one feature and now it makes you female. I am inferring that they are likely female. Why? Because these secondary sex characteristics can only arise as the result of co-occurring mechanisms. That is someone who naturally has breasts, someone who naturally has... Hold on, wait, Mike, stop, wait.
No, let me
Mike, no. Let me finish and then you can go as much as you want. Okay, bro? Just let me respond. There's co-occurring. You're not even listening to me, and this is why you're not understanding what I'm saying. There's co-occurring mechanisms. That means, for example, if someone has breasts, it is statistically likely going to be the case, overwhelming majority of the time, that if they have breasts, that they also have things like primary sex characteristics, large gametes, vaginal canal patterns, female typical, like, chromosomes and like genes and so forth, right? They're more likely to have these things. So that is why I can infer that they are likely female. But to prove that they are indeed female, I would have to wait to prove that they are. Stop, Mike. To prove that they are indeed 100% female, like for me to prove that conclusion, I would need to look at the entire HPC cluster and affirm that.
Okay, so we can say that somebody's a woman based on those secondary sex characteristics.
No, I can infer it.
There's sufficient indicators. There are sufficient indicators, right?
Listen.
Yes or no? Are they sufficient indicators for somebody's gender? Yes or no?
I think in the extended use of the term, yes.
So that's my view.
Okay, but you're not. No. That's not. No.
That's my view.
Mike. That is. I said the extended. Hold on, Mike. I said the extended use. Mike, I said the. Oh my gosh, Mike, I said the extended use of the term. I'm not referring to the primary use. You are arguing that the primary use.
Can I please explain this to you?
Okay,
Mike,
why you're incorrect you are saying. Here. Mike, you are saying.
Let me speak.
You are arguing the primary usage is based off of common observation. I am arguing that extended usage.
No, I'm not. That's not my argument. You haven't listened to me this entire time. And every time I give you this science, you say, no, that's not good. I gave you so much fucking science. I give you multiple studies. You just say, no, they're all bad.
I'm not interested in your science.
I'm
not interested in your science. Science doesn't make philosophical claims. I'm interested into as to like what your philosophical argument is. I don't care about the science until you can prove it to me.
You used biology.
I don't care about the science. I didn't give you any studies. I'm not basing my argument. This is philosophy of biology. It's not fucking data.
Can I please speak now? Can I get like a minute to speak?
Go for it.
Okay. Thank you. You just said who cares about the science, but your entire argument is based on the fucking science. You said biology. Well, I'm using biology too, and it shows us that brains are complicated and that your identity is coming from your brain, and trans women have identities, brain states that are highly corresponding to their gender identity. That's a good biological evidence that gender is more complicated than just your fucking sex organs. So I can absorb your sex-based definition of female and male and say, yeah, there's only female and male, but I go a step beyond your definition by capturing the sociological nuances, the psychological nuances, the neurobiological nuances of manhood and womanhood. Yours can't do that. Yours does not even match the amount of utility that my word can provide. That's why contemporary gender theorists use the word the way I do, not the way you do. That's my entire argument. It seems you have not even remotely touched this argument. You just keep saying, no, there's a biological reason for female. I don't care. Yeah, I agree that there's a female and a male. Biologically, we can define those as cluster concepts. Well, we can go a step beyond with gender, because gender is far more complicated than just your pee-pee.
Okay. Yeah, like I said earlier, we already went over first of all, I'm not appealing to science in the same way that you are. You're referring to epistemology, right? You're referring to how we know things. I'm referring to how we categorize things within biology. So I'm talking about the philosophy of biology. I'm not bringing up like relevant studies and so forth as you are. The studies are making descriptive claims, whereas you're trying to make a revisionary claim. The studies are not relevant to this revisionary claim, right? And then also, we're not talking about a normative claim. You're again going back to the normative argument. The proposition is one that is descriptive. Trans women are women, and you are affirming that claim. And so you have to prove that. So we're not going to normative claims, but if you want to shift the proposition to... Hold on. Hold on, I let you talk. So if you want to shift the proposition to that because you can't defend this position, that's fine. Second of all, neuroscience doesn't define what a woman is, so again, the data is irrelevant. Neuroscience doesn't go in and say that just because someone has a female typical brain, this now means you're a woman. You are making that conclusion. You are going from the data to inferring causation, which you can't prove to me some kind of causal mechanism, and then you're making a conclusion based off of that, which is inconsistent. Not to mention, inductively, it's just a weak claim, and the evidence is weak. Why? Because we don't have like a substantial amount of meta-analyses, coupled with the fact that we don't have neuroscientific consensus. This is still something being debated, it's still something being researched and so forth. I'm not denying that gender identity has some like reality to it materially when it comes to the brain and so forth and mental states. I do think it has some kind of reality. I just think you're twisting it to fit your definition. Third of all, if your argument was utility-based, then you should have made that argument from the beginning. Hold on, you should have made that argument from the beginning. Your definition had nothing to do with utility in the beginning, and that is why I was disagreeing with you. But if you're making a utility-based argument, then be consistent with that. You tend to ad hoc a lot, and you tend to change your position so that I can't really get you on anything. So if it was utility-based, you need to tell me it was utility-based. And also one more thing. One more thing. You keep saying that the common usage is not relevant, but I think it's kind of intuitive that the common usage is relevant. I think I'm more interested in as to how most people understand and use the term woman, not how you use the term and how you think we ought to use the term. Again, this is a normative claim. When we're talking about are trans women a woman, we're talking about how do most people use the term, how do most people understand the term, and would they consider trans women to be women? And you didn't allow me to provide my substantiation for common usage based off of the BERT model because you didn't want me to get into that. You just said fuck BERT. But yeah, I do think common usage is relevant. If you're going based off of your own personal definition, you're saying this is what I think and I think this is what we ought to do, then okay, I don't really have much to argue with there. I would like to hear your position. I'm interested, but it doesn't necessarily make it true. It doesn't make the proposition true. Yeah. That's all I have to say.
Okay. So if we were to demonstrate that your brain gives rise to your gender identity and that trans women have a woman identity, would your position change?
I would have to say no, and the reason for that being is because I think you are equivocating the term gender identity. I don't know why you're making that face. I think you're equivocating the term. Okay. I think you're equivocating the term gender identity with gender in itself, right? So there's a distinction. Hold on. Let me respond. Stop. Let me finish. Stop, Mike. Stop. I'm letting you finish. Let me finish. Let's be respectful. I think you are equivocating the terms, right? There's a distinction between a theoretical model.
You're talking way
Stop, Mike. Stop. You asked me a question. Let me respond to it.
This is unfair. This is not a
Mike,
debate.
let me respond.
Mike,
let me respond. I'll let you talk. If you want to say something, you need to say it within your entire allocated time, okay? When I stop talking, you say it, but the moment I start talking, you can't interject again, okay? This is how this is going to work. This is what we're doing. I'm letting you talk, and I'm letting you say everything you want, and I'm writing down what you're saying so that I can respond to it, whatever. Anyways, you're equivocating between the psychological model and the neuroscientific model that posits that gender identity might be a real concept. It might be based in biology or psychology and so forth. So there's a distinction between a theoretical model posited by scientists and the word itself. So take, for example, we have the concept of evolutionary theory posited by biologists. This doesn't mean that all instances of the term evolution that I use are referring to the theory. The term evolution can just refer to some kind of progression that results in changing an object state, right? So for example, I can say that the evolution of smartphones over the past year, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't necessarily refer to evolutionary theory when I use the term evolution. So you'd need to substantiate why the theoretical model is the commonly understood definition of gender. And again, we're not talking about normative claims. You can say, I think it ought to be the used definition of what it means to be a woman. But I'm talking about you need to substantiate why we would use the theoretical, or why we use the theoretical model. Sorry, I can't fucking speak. That we use the theoretical model as the primary definition of gender and what it means to be a woman.
All right, I'm going to give you a formal argument. Ready? Want to write this down? There's about 5 premises. So, P1, brain sex refers to neurobiological structures, patterns, or traits in the brain that correlate with gendered behaviors, self-perception, and identity. P2, Gender identity is a deep internal sense of being male typical man or female typical woman or another gender, which is influenced by brain sex. P3. A person is recognized as a woman in society based on their gender identity when it aligns with traits typically associated with being female. P4. Trans women have a gender identity that aligns with being female typical. P5. If brain sex determines gender identity, and gender identity is sufficient for categorizing somebody as woman, then alignment of the brain sex with a female type identity qualifies a person as a woman. Conclusion, therefore, if the brain sex is shifted towards female gender identity in trans women, then trans women are women.
I don't know why we're being pedantic. You're just like reasserting the same things earlier that we disagreed upon. So, like, for example...
Yeah, which premise do you disagree with? Which premise do you disagree with?
Can I respond? I was going to get into that. Okay, great. So first of all, like, for example, premise 1, brain sex correlates with gendered behaviors. You're making a conclusion based off of something that's not axiomatically proven to be, like, true by consensus, right? You're taking particular pieces of evidence, and then you're just, like, you're cherry picking, and then you're making that premise true based off of those axioms.
Okay, I can just
wait. I'm not finished. I'm not finished. I'm not finished.
But I give you studies.
I'm not finished. I'm not finished, Mike. I let you speak. Stop, Mike. You are the issue here. It is not me. Stop, Mike. Okay. First of all, I would like the motivations and the argument for premise 1 because I think you're just arbitrarily granting it. I would like to see meta-analyses, and I would like to see some kind of neuroscientific consensus in order for me to accept it. Second of all, sure, I can agree that I'll grant gender identity is influenced by brain sex. For the third premise, a person is recognized as a woman based on gender identity. Yeah, you're just like... Why is that true? You need to prove to me why that's true. A person is recognized as a woman based on gender identity. Again, you are making the normative claim. You're going off of your normative claim that I believe this is how it should be defined, not how we define the term. So can you prove to me that a person is defined by their gender identity, how they identify themselves? You need to prove that premise to me. And then, yeah, you need to motivate premises 1 through 3 for me. 3, I'm just going to reject because I already explained to you that common usage... or I could have substantiated that for you, but you don't want me to. But common usage doesn't support premise 3, so I want you to give me motivations and arguments for premise 1 and 2.
Sure. I gave you multiple studies already, but I'll give them again for you because you didn't listen. The study is called Neurobiological Characteristics Associated with Gender Identity, finding some neuroimaging studies in the Amsterdam cohort of children and adolescents experiencing gender incongruence. It took a look at people's brains, and they found specific transgender neurosignatures suggesting a unique brain phenotype.
Could you send me them?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Like, can you send me
another? You can just look it up. I can't text you right now.
Okay.
But
I mean, you could add me on Discord or something. Sure. Just say out the whole name of the study.
Neurobiological characteristics associated with gender identity.
And who are the researchers?
Now you care about the science.
Well, I didn't really. I wanted to get.
Would you look at that? Would you look at that?
I mean, I wanted to get into the philosophical argument more because I think your nominalist position was problematic, which I already demonstrated. But
now she cares about the science. Now she's worried.
Because we're focused. I'm not worried. We're focusing.
The evidence.
I already told you. First of all, is this a meta-analysis? And 2, it still doesn't prove that there's neuroscientific consensus.
You don't need a meta-analysis for everything.
I do. Wait. Okay, that's fine. Anyways, I'm focusing on the science because you are really immature. It's crazy. You're a grown man. I'm younger than you. Let's be classy about this. Listen, I'm asking you about the science because I'm asking you to prove your premise, and your premise relates to something science-based. So that's why I'm looking into the science.
Look,
so can you tell me the researchers? Can you tell me the researchers? Can you tell me the researchers? I'm not stalling. I'm asking you for the researchers.
Julie Baker.
I'm asking you. Okay, Julie Baker. Let's go through this.
These are all peer-reviewed studies in peer-reviewed journal.
Give me about 2 minutes. Yeah, sure. Just give me about 2 minutes. So what is what are you trying to argue with this study?
That it demonstrates a specific transgender neural signature, which...
Where does it mention transgender people?
in the study, people experiencing gender incongruence?
It mentions gender incongruence.
Yeah, that's the title of the study.
No, the title of the study is
Observing
Neurobiology of
people
Gender Identity.
experiencing gender incongruence. Look, maybe you're not prepared for this kind of
Can you
debate.
like no, it's not
maybe
that.
you're not
Stop,
prepared for this debate.
Mike, stop. You're
Maybe
not gonna
if you wanna
stop.
schedule another debate
Mike,
where
I'm
I
not
give you
Mike,
all the
Mike,
data.
Mike, I'm not doing this, Mike. I'm not doing this, okay? I'm willing to go through your studies right now. You have to let me go through your studies. You are really immature. How old are you? Let me go through your studies. I'm not here to argue the science with you. I was saying I would be willing to grant that gender identity is something real.
You're doing it as you speak.
No. I'm looking into your studies. You want to know why? Because I've looked into your other videos, and it seems you don't know what you're talking about. And you know who else, went up and debated you? Wait. You went up and debated Rue.
Yeah,
wait. You went up and debated Rue, and she got you on the fact that you were making neuroscientific claims that were untrue. And the moment she came up, you had to concede because she knew what she went. For example, you initially made the claim with Nate or Edna that there was a neuroscientific consensus, and when you could not provide, hold on, wait, there is. You literally conceded in that live that there was no neuroscientific consensus. Do we need to bring up the video? You gotta unmute, bro.
I gave it to you in the beginning. The American
Hold on.
Pediatrics.
Wait, Mike,
No,
I'm asking you. Mike, I'm asking you. Mike. You conceded. You conceded. You conceded with Nate and Nate or Edna. And Rue, you conceded with Nate and Rue. No. You conceded that there was. We can pull up the video. We can pull up the video. I'm not being disingenuous. Bring me the evidence that there's multiple meta. Wait. I'm not being disingenuous. Oh my god. Oh my god. Stop.
Explain why this is wrong.
Mike, stop. Listen. Okay, let's calm down. Let's both. Hold on. Let's both stop. Let's both stop. Let's calm down. Stop. Mike, stop. Calm down. Stop. Let's both stop. Mike, I'm not gonna stop. I'm not gonna stop muting until we calm down. We're gonna take a break for 30 seconds.
No.
We're gonna take a break for 30 seconds. We're gonna take a break for 30 seconds. Mike, stop. I'm serious. Mike, I'm gonna drop you. Mike, I'm gonna drop you. Mike, I am gonna drop you.
You're just
Mike, I'm gonna drop you. Stop. Mike, take a break. Have self-control. Stop. Mike.
I can explain why
calm
you're
down. Mike, calm down. Oh my god, Mike. Calm down. We're gonna take.
I have the consensus.
Mike, we're gonna take a 30-second break. We're gonna take a 30-second break.
Just being
Mike, stop, Mike. Okay,
I can
get off. You need to get off for 30 seconds. You can request again. Come back up. We're gonna take a break because you're freaking out. Okay, calm down. You need to calm down. I'm asking you to take a break so we can both calm down. Okay, and we don't interject on each other. So I'm dropping you. You can come back up, okay? No issue, but I'm going to give it 1 minute before I bring you back up because you need to calm down. Listen, Mike, let's drop the rhetoric. Me and you both, let's do our best to drop the rhetoric, right? Because I'm getting annoyed and I'm interjecting because you're saying, you're trying to be rhetorical. You're not actually making any arguments that are substantiated in any kind of philosophical grounding, right? And I feel frustrated that you're being rhetorical and you're saying, oh, you didn't come prepared. No, I evidently did come prepared. I know your entire framework. I did research, right? I'm asking you for your research and I just want to look into it, right? I just want to understand your perspective now and I want to look into the studies. That's not wrong for me to look into the studies. I want to read them. I'm not just going to take your word for what you claim to be in the study. That's it. That's why I want to look at the studies. It's not that big of a deal. Whew. I get particularly frustrated when people are being very rhetorical because you are trying to poison the well. You're trying to make the audience believe, she doesn't know what she's talking about when it comes to the science. In spite of the fact, I am the one with research assistantship. I'm the one who's done research. I'm the one with the biological sciences degree, right? I'm the one with the computer science degree who knows how to build that BERT model, okay, that word sensing model. Stop with the rhetoric. I'm not telling you that you're unprepared. I'm not telling you that... whatever. Anyways, I'm yapping. Let me bring him back up. If he's still here. Someone said you gave him a way out. Yeah, he's not here. He left. Okay. Okay, I'm being completely honest. Like, wallah, I genuinely just wanted us to calm down. I wanted us to take a break. My mouth is dry. Yeah, I kicked him because he wouldn't stop, guys. I wanted us to take a break. Anyway, sorry. I muted my mic for a second. But I wanted us to take a break because he was really frustrated. I was really frustrated. He makes her mute him. Yeah, if you guys have been here the whole live, you'll see, like, the moments where I let him speak. I really did let him speak. And then most of the time, when it was my time to speak, he did not let me finish speaking. I'll be frank. Yeah, there were times where I did interject. But it's mostly because he was just being rhetorical. I just don't appreciate being, like, slandered or having, like, someone poison the well about me. You accused him and didn't let him appeal. What did I accuse him of? He's more than welcome to come back up and we can continue the debate. I just want to be respectful and I want to be cordial about it. Yeah, I don't think he's coming back. Okay, I guess no. I was gonna do Q&A. I guess not.
That was interesting. Holy chaotic.
Yeah, that was really
Oh,
chaotic.
he's back. Okay.
Is he?
Yeah, he said in chat.
Okay. Wait, Haji, I'm gonna drop you again.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, it glitched. Wait. Okay, there we go. Okay. Are we
I'm back. I'm back.
That's great. I wanted you to come back.
You thought I could leave, and you thought okay. So what I actually said was that the consensus is debatable. Everything's debatable. Whether the Earth is flat or not, it's debatable. The problem is that my view is that there is a consensus because we have several organizations which are backed by thousands of doctors each in their respective fields of endocrinology, behavioral sciences, neuroscience. As I mentioned before, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American Urological Association, the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, the American College of Physicians. These are many thousands of doctors, okay? So if that's not a consensus to you, fine. But to me, that's consensus. Thousands and thousands of doctors in their fields saying, yeah, there's more to gender than just your pee-pee. It's also neurobiological and things like that. Okay, now, so to further substantiate my argument, let's go over the science.
Okay, yeah, before we go into the science again,
let's hear your scientific
just because I have a number of studies that affirm some kind of conclusion, I'm not denying that there's some kind of, how do I say this? What's the word? That there's some reputability or reputability, sorry. I don't know, to your claim that gender identity is grounded in something neurobiological. Again, like I said before,
you're just gonna
hold on, can I stop? Mike, stop! Mike, stop! Oh my god, look, he's doing it again! He's doing it again! Bro, that's your fucking proof! I don't do it, guys, it's him! Stop! I didn't say I reject the science. I said I'm willing to grant it. Even in my personal case, I'd be willing to grant it. But the reason why I'm not willing to grant it for you is because based on what I've seen from other lives and from your own posts and the claims that you make is that you don't fully read these studies. You don't understand these studies. Stop. I will critique them. We're gonna get to them. But like the difficult stop. The difficult
This is not a debate.
Stop.
This is not a debate.
I let you talk. Stop, Mike. Stop. I'm gonna keep muting you. I'm not gonna lie. Stop, Mike. I let you talk. Look, I keep losing my points because you won't let me talk. Stop. Anyways, we can get into the studies. I'm willing to look through them, though I think that's going to take some time. I'll look through like one or two. Like I said, even in my personal case, I'm willing to grant it. I don't necessarily reject it, and I think there is some grounds to your claim. Like, I don't think it's completely baseless. It's just I don't like the way that you tend to, in your videos and your debates, tend to just make biological claims, and you do this because you engage with people who don't. Stop. I'm not insulting you. I'm not insulting you. That's not ad hoc. Stop.
It's not about me, it's about
Mike,
the science.
stop. I'm not insulting you. I don't think you're stupid. You seem to be very intelligent. You seem to do a lot of research. You have an interest in science, right? I'm not doubting that. But I think you don't really understand the claims that you're making with these studies. You are reaching for claims. Stop. Oh my god. Oh my god, Mike. Like Mike, the point I'm trying to make.
Just read the.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Stop. This is ridiculous, Mike. I'm gonna be frank with you. If you do this one more time, the debate is over. Okay? If you interrupt me one more time, the debate is over. I let you get to it. I have to keep repeating the stupid fucking points I keep making, like the most arbitrary points over and over, because you won't listen to me. And to ensure the audience is tracking what I'm saying, I have to repeat the same sentence over and over. So we sit here for like 10 minutes. Stop. And you're making me lose my points. I had other things I wanted to say. Now I forgot most of them. The main point I was going to make is I have no issue granting it, right? Even if there is no consensus. But the issue that I have is that you're claiming that there's consensus when there isn't. Just because I have a number of doctors that say that, they agree upon this doesn't mean that there is consensus amongst neuroscientists that there is a neurobiological underpinning. Do I believe that is a real psychological state? Yes. Do I believe that it is a real mental state? Yes. Do I believe that it might have some kind of neurobiological underpinning? Yeah, I think there might be, but not in the way that you are framing it, right? So that is my position on it. Now, if you want to get into the studies, I want to look through the study that you gave me, maybe one or two, because we don't have the time to go through all of them, and I need to actually read them. But yeah, we can go through them.
Can I speak now? Can I speak now, please?
Yeah, I stopped talking.
Thank you. So, the study I gave you is in the neurobiological characteristics associated with gender identity. That would found that there is different brain phenotypes with, for example, transgender people. So can you refute that study?
Are you okay with me taking 2 minutes to skim through it?
Oh, okay. You know what? If you want to debate another time, we can reschedule, and you look at the.
Are you dodging? Can you let me skim through it for 2 minutes? Are you capable of waiting for 2 minutes?
I didn't know you were so unprepared. Okay.
What do you mean unprepared? I'm not going to just take what you say.
Well, for a neuroscience expert, you sure don't know much about it.
So you think just because I study neuroscience that I have to have every study fucking memorized? What is this?
Well, if you're debating this topic,
what is this?
Should be something you should know.
I don't need to. No, you're always going to bring up studies that I don't know about. There's always new emerging evidence.
Okay, then refute the study. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
Do you want to see the evidence of you conceding to Rue?
Take your time. Take your time. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll go through the study, but I just want to show the evidence of him conceding to Rue since he wants to deny it.
Oh,
we have evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, you asked me for the evidence, so I'm giving it to you.
You can't refute with science, so this
No, I said I'm going to go to the science. Can you chill out? You just asked me for the evidence earlier, and I was looking for it, so I got it for you. Just give me one moment. I need to share my screen. And then I'll go look at your study after this. Or maybe I'll let you guys watch it while I go through the study. Oops.
You just have to do this. For no reason.
You asked me for it. Shh. You asked for it, so I'm giving it to you. So you're going to take it.
You're muting me for no reason.
Yes, because we want to watch the video. Stop talking. I'm not going to talk either during the video.
Sex versus gender associated brain structure, right? Neurobiological characteristics associated with gender identity. These are all studies that demonstrate my point. And they all form the consensus. They charge the consensus that gender identities come from the brain.
A few moments later.
But I just wanted to bring up that the neurological consensus is not that gender identity is in the brain, despite multiple attempts to prove that it is. Most are still arguing that the male and female brain are overstated and methodologically weak. And I can give you some sources to this. Give me just 1 second.
It's debatable what the consensus is. I agree with you there. Yeah, everything's debatable. The point is that my view is that there is a consensus, which is based on the evidence. I think that there is a consensus that's sufficient to say that there is a neurobiological underpinning behind gender. Now, you can debate that with me, but to me, it's irrelevant. There's enough evidence. And I think there is a consensus. But that edit didn't do anything for you. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. What is that? That didn't do anything, right? Just because Rue said something doesn't make it true. How do we know what she's saying is true? She didn't provide any data.
No, I'm not talking about what she said. I'm
Okay,
talking
great.
about what you.
So-
I'm
so
talking.
what the fuck are
Stop,
you talking
Mike.
about?
Let me
Why does that-
respond. I'm not talking about what she said. I'm talking about what you said.
Why can't you just refute?
You conceded to there
Why
not
can't you
being.
refute
You
the science?
conceded. I'm gonna refute the science. I just wanted to
Then-
show you that you did. You did indeed.
Then do it. Then do
I'm trying to show you that you did
Then
indeed. Hold on, Mike. Stop. You're
Refute
tweaking out. You're tweaking out, Mike. Stop.
refute this.
Mike, stop. Mike, stop.
Refute this-
Mike. Okay, this is
refute-
the final warning. Stop,
refute
Mike.
this-
Stop, Mike. Stop. I brought it up because you asked me earlier. You wanted evidence of you conceding that there is not scientific consensus because there is debate.
I never. So you think just because something's debatable?
Wait. So you think? Hold on.
No, Raz. Do you think?
No. I don't think that just because something. No. I don't think. No. I'm
Please
no.
let me defend myself.
I
You're
don't
not
think.
letting me
I don't
speak.
think.
You're not letting me
I don't
speak.
think. I don't think.
Do you think
that because there is
No,
that
no,
no,
please,
I
please
don't.
let
I
me
don't. I'm
answer.
answering your question. No, I don't.
Yeah, I
And the
didn't
reason
answer.
why
I didn't ask you yet. I
Yes,
didn't
you're
ask
asking
you
me.
yet.
You're asking me if I think because there is debate that means there is no consensus. No, I don't think that. The reason why I'm saying that there.
Okay,
Hold
there
on.
we
The
go.
reason why I'm saying that there is no consensus in the way that you are framing it is, of course, we can have debate about how evolutionary theory works, right? We can have different frameworks that people subscribe to, but there is generally consensus.
Bingo,
Hold on.
exactly.
Hold on. There is generally consensus that evolutionary theory, the concept of it fundamentally, is indeed true. So that is the consensus that I'm looking for. You cannot provide me with that consensus. The fact that there is still almost like at least a 60-40, maybe 50-50 split on whether or not these scientists even believe that there's brain sex, let alone that it's going to be determined by gender
That's
identity.
not relevant.
Let alone that's going to be determined by
It's
gender.
not relevant.
Stop, Mike. Let alone the fact that it's going to be determined by
gotta let-
gender identity. Let alone the
This
fact.
all-
Stop. Mike, if you do it one more time, I'm kicking
gotta
you.
let
I'm
me
kicking
speak
you.
here. You gotta let
Stop.
me
If you
speak
do
here.
it one more time, I'm kicking you. Stop. Like, I feel so ghetto right now. Like, I feel so classless. Like, I don't, stop making me yell. Anyways, my point is, there is not debate in the same way about, for example, evolutionary theory and it being true, in the same way that there is debate in there being, in gender identity being grounded in, neurobiology, or there being sex-based brains. That is my point.
Yeah, I gave you those several organizations backed by thousands of doctors and scientists. Thousands. Is that consensus enough, or do you want like a billion? That's why this is debatable, right? This is the point. It's debatable. You can fight and say, no, it's not consensus. But I think it is. I think thousands of doctors and scientists who say, yes, this is the case, I think that's good enough to say it's consensus, especially when they're all reputable scientists in the field. Now, can we get back to actually refuting the science instead of you just pivoting to nonsense about me?
I'm not pivoting to nonsense. I'm looking through
So
your
then
study
refute-
right now.
then refute
I'm looking
the
through your study.
science.
I'm
Then
looking through
refute
your
the
study right now.
science.
I'm
Then
looking through
refute
your
the
I'm
s-
looking through your study right now. Be quiet, okay? Oh god, man. Okay, give me 1 second, guys. This is a long study. He can yap if he wants to, I don't mind, but he needs to stop talking to me because I can't focus. Can you stop? I just explained, Can you stop? You're so weird, bro. You're actually so weird. It's not even... Nobody's laughing, bro. Can you stop? I just explained I'm trying to read the study. How old are you, bro? Can I read the study, or are you gonna keep trying to, distract me? It's really annoying. Mike, if you unmute yourself one more time, I am going to kick you because I need to read the study. You need to allow me to read the study. He doesn't want to be mature about it. We're not going to debate it anymore. Okay, if anyone wants to do Q&A, you want to come up and debate me, feel free to do so. It's not running, guys. It's just about being mature. We're having like a debate, right? We're not like, this is a formal debate that he asked me to plan, right? We're trying to engage. I'm trying to read the study that he sent me, at least skim through it. And I explained to him that, I don't want to hear things because it's hard for me to focus. Anyways, if anyone wants to come up, you want to challenge my position, we'll do a quick Q&A for like 30 minutes, 5 minutes per guest. Bring up Haji because that's my goat.
I don't know anything about the biology stuff, but for the philosophy stuff, since he says that it's only be conventional, he's an argument for why we ought to make gender conventional and not like a natural kind. He probably doesn't have an argument for that, so.
He didn't have an argument for anything philosophical.
Yeah, I mean, you can say it's conventional, and if you can see it's arbitrary and it's conventional, then you have to give an argument for why the word woman should be used in that manner. And then, again, that's an ought claim, not about what it is, so. He kind of conceded on the
proposition we're debating.
Yeah.
Anyways, I already demonstrated that philosophically with the nominalism stuff. Not only does he not understand it, but he admits that it's completely conventionalist, unstable.
Yeah. Because if he grants that, what determines like the traits, the relevant traits, if he believes that is things that if he believes that that's a thing that exists objectively, then he'd have to grant that universals exist. Right, like you're a conceptualist, right? You can say the universals exist in the mind. He's a complete nominalist, right? Which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. So he misunderstood. Like HPCs can still function as a universal, so I'm treating the HPC as a universal. What was I gonna say?
Yeah, and also like the traits that are decided in the HPCs aren't arbitrary, right?
Yeah, that's what he was misunderstanding
there's biological
earlier.
backing to it. Yeah.
It's not like I'm saying, oh, it's subjective, it's based on culture. Like, this is, like, the biological definition. But, okay, I'm going to let people up. I'm going to do it in order based off... Oh, I'll bring Saucy up, too. I'm going to do it in order based off of, what's it called? Who's requesting? If you have contentions with my point. Or I guess if you had contentions with Mike, you can come up here, but he's not here anymore. I don't know if he's still here. He can come back for the Q&A, but we're not going to debate anymore just because he's incapable of being mature. Keep a ref in arguments? I don't think that a ref would have done anything. He did It's Just Music. Yeah, but he was doing it all live, and I, like, politely asked. I was like, I don't want to hear anything because I can't focus. And then he started playing music, so... Change the pic. I don't know if Mike is still here, but if you want to come back for Q&A for people in the comments to ask you questions, you can come back, but... I don't know if he's still here.
I want to ask him a question. I'm dying to ask him a question. Go on the debate. I mean, you can run a poll, I guess. I mean, kind of cringe, but you can see one.
I don't think he's here anymore. I think he left. He reminds me of, like, Charlie Kirk. Okay, I'm gonna start bringing people up. I don't know if Mike is live or he's on anything. If you guys want to let him know, he can come back for the Q&A. I won't be debating him directly, but he can definitely answer questions from people in the comments if he wants to defend his position further, but I don't think he's here anymore.
I came up to give my official verdict. I'm the judge for this debate, by the way, in case anyone was curious. Raz won, Mike's a moron. All of her objections were fantastic. Mike acts like a 4-year-old. All fun and brave. Also, get Julian up here. It's Jambar 11.
Mike, wait, I'm the second ref.
Mike, stop.
I'm the second ref.
Mike,
I'm the second ref because there had to be multiple refs. So, yeah, now, so Raz won by majority decision. since it's, I guess,
Oh, should
best
we
out
do
of
a
3. There
poll?
you go.
Should we do a poll? Who we think won?
Yeah, because the thing is, look,
Well,
I like disagree with Razan's proposition. I still think that she won. So
yeah,
that's
Haji. In case you guys think I'm just bringing up people who are like gonna affirm my position in like echo chamber, Haji does not believe that trans women aren't women.
yeah,
He believes
yeah,
he
exactly. Like we were
agrees with
literally
Mike's.
debating this like an hour ago, like 2 hours.
He
ago.
agrees with Mike's position, and he still believes I won. But how do I do a poll? Whatever, it doesn't matter.
You might need like a mod to do it. I don't know how it works. I don't know if you can do it from like the computer.
It's fine. I don't know how to do the poll.
Yeah, and by the way,
Oh, I
everybody's
see. I
saying
see
to
it.
bring Jamball up.
I'll bring him up. Yeah. Just give me 1 second. I just want to see if there's where the poll is. Okay, I can't find it. It's fine. I don't know how to do it on here. I'm not familiar with. Oh.
Yeah, it's fine. Just ask mod to do it if they can't do it. It's fine. Yeah.
Let's go.
Hey. Do you have a contention? Or like something you wanted to say about the debate?
Yeah, I do. It's mainly about like the reading of this question as a descriptive one. Like when I first got into this like philosophy community, everyone was saying that, oh, it's about common usage. I'm not so sure about that now. I mean, there's two approaches taken to the question. There's the approach from traditional metaphysics. And in traditional metaphysics, you're just obviously not concerned with moral values when you're asking, are trans women women? But there's another approach which is really, really gaining attention in social philosophy, social metaphysics, in that questions like these have to be answered not simply by ordinary metaphysical inquiry, but also they have to be value related. So when you ask someone, are transgender women, they're going to say, like, should we use the term woman to encompass trans women? And that's the right way to answer these questions. That's the right way to examine whether or not they're true or false. Now, you can reject this approach to metaphysics, but it's not strictly speaking accurate to say that philosophers in general agree that this is a descriptive question. There's many of them that think, hey, a question like this really relies on normative inquiry and not just.
I think you misunderstand. I don't necessarily think that it's limited to like how do I say that? Like it's not just. I don't think that it's just a descriptive statement, right? But I think that what Mike was primarily arguing and what we agreed to argue was the descriptive aspect, what it is. We didn't agree to argue, oughts or normative claims, and if he wanted to shift to that, I was fine with that. But yeah, this is what we agreed to argue, what it is and how it is defined.
Wait, how it is defined? I mean, it didn't seem in your conversation like you would agree to any of that. I mean,
what do you mean?
He kept on bringing up value latent talk in your discussion, no?
Sorry, he brought up what?
Like, he brought up conversations about moral values in your discussion constantly.
Yeah.
She rejected that. She was annoyed. Yeah, that's why she kept on doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you came in late because if you were here from the beginning of were you here from the beginning of the debate?
I was here pretty early on. I don't know exactly when it started, but
okay,
all I know is that
I think you misunderstand. The background is there, but what we agreed to argue is what is, right? And I was asking for substantiation for that. Later on, when I refuted his prototypical nominalism position and pointed out that he doesn't understand it, and that he's not actually subscribing to prototypical nominalism or resemblance theory, that he was actually subscribing to extreme nominalism or conventionalist nominalism, that is when he began shifting and saying, okay, well, I think it's bad, I think it's harmful, which, okay, that's fine. I told him. It's not that I didn't want to have the conversation, the normative conversation or debate. I was fine with that. I just told him we needed to leave that for later because what we were debating right now is what is.
But I mean, I guess...
So I don't think that the conversation is limited to that. I also have, I guess, normative positions. I haven't articulated them as well as my position for what I believe woman is descriptively, right? But I have, I guess, unpolished arguments as why I believe it ought to be something biological. So I have no issue debating that. I don't think it's limited to something descriptive. So I think you misunderstand.
I'm not.
It just seemed ad hoc. It just seems super ad hoc. Because after he couldn't answer, he said,
Yeah.
"Oh, do you see how like people are gonna get unalived from this?" It seems so ad hoc. That's why, like.
Okay,
So.
I don't get what the whole nominalist thing has to do with this conversation. Really, I mean,
Were you
the
here?
nominalism dispute is kind of irrelevant to everything. But
I mean, no, it definitely was relevant.
No,
Were you
because
here
like
when we had
because he's a nominalist. He doesn't think universals exist, and because of that, when you're using like resemblance theory, there's like two things. Either going to say that there's like resemblance theory, meaning that there's specific traits that cluster together or whatever, or you're going to take a prototype theory. We have a prototype, and depending on how something, how similar is something to that prototype, then it's going to be like that thing, right? So like squareness. You're gonna have like the prototype of a square,
nominalists still
right?
think and still believe in categories like woman. Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
nobody's
No,
saying.
no.
Okay, I don't
No,
think you
they
were
agree. Yeah,
here
okay.
when we were. I'm not going to be frank. I
but
don't think
I'm
you
just
were
saying
here. Wait,
for the
wait, hold
debate.
on, hold on. Just let me respond. I don't think you were here when we were debating that in its entirety, because if you were, you would understand what my contention was. My point in arguing with him about his position on prototypical nominalism is that it wasn't actually prototypical nominalism. It was conventionalist or conventionalist nominalism. Sorry, it was conventionalist nominalism. And my point was is that his categories were completely arbitrary, and he has no actual method to track a term. That was my point in bringing that up. When we're talking about things in language, I would think it's pretty important that, especially something like woman, I would think it's pretty important to track the term and who fits into the term and understand what relevant features or degrees of similarity and so forth make them a part of that category. Yes or no?
Yeah, but I feel like everyone was doing that. You have certain paradigm cases which are obviously going to be included, and you have like, I mean, his is going to include trans women. So, like, if he wants to craft out the concept, taking the value-laden approach he seems to be taking, he would say, okay, the paradigm cases are like ordinarily biological women, and then I'm also going to add trans women because it's better to add them here for moral reasons, and that's how I'm going to define the concept. But I felt like you both were doing that.
I don't think you
Wait,
understood.
wouldn't he need to be more realist in order to do that, though?
No, obviously not.
Okay, well then it would be subjective of the society, right?
It was on the society. I don't know about that language, but it wouldn't be objective, but it's still fine to do.
Yeah. Anyways,
I mean,
I
don't
think
really
you've been up.
understand.
I want to limit it to 5 minutes so we can get as many people up as possible. But thank you for coming up.
Okay, sure.
Love you, Julian.
Love you, Julian.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi. Do you have a contention with my position? Or Mike's position,
Not
I
yours,
guess?
but with Mike's, yeah. I don't have a philosophy degree or anything, but I do have a degree in biomedical sciences. I have a master's degree. And first of all, his definition of consensus, where he kept saying I can bring up thousands of scientists, that doesn't dictate or define what a consensus is. A consensus is the majority or vast majority ruling in the scientific community or agreement. So him just saying that thousands of doctors agree did not define consensus at all.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Right, and then, sorry, just the second point was at one point, I believe he said that the complexity of the neuroscience is evidence that when people think they're a different gender, that would be evidence, just the fact that it's so complex. And then also, I think it was completely fallacious for him to, I think at one point, ask you, do you care about like people dying or something? So I don't know, that was just my take on it.
No, yeah, I agree with you in terms of the consensus part. I don't think he understands how scientific consensus works. You know, I can have 1,000 doctors that say, okay, I believe gender identity has some neurobiological underpinnings. And guys, by the way, I have no issue granting this. The only reason I was like pushing back on it is again because I've seen his videos and I've seen his lives and I've went through them, and he says a lot of things he clearly doesn't understand. And again, I'm not trying to poison the well, but this is just how I feel. It's just I've gone through his videos, I've gone through his lives. It very much seems like he drops buzzwords that he doesn't actually understand the meaning of. Like, for example, in his videos he mentions prototypical nominalism, but it's evident he doesn't clearly understand prototypical nominalism. Or in his lives, he was debated Edna on a few things pertaining to neuroscience. I don't exactly remember what he said, but like he said a lot of things that were problematic. One thing I remember is he said that neuroscience doesn't determine causal mechanisms. He said that
neuroscientists don't ever determine causal mechanisms in his debate with Edna. And so that, like, I saw a couple of things, I can't name the rest, I have them in my notes somewhere, but he said a lot of things pertaining to neuroscience that were just objectively incorrect, epistemologically incorrect. And so when I saw that, what I wanted to do by asking him for his evidence is that I want to see that he actually knows what he's talking about and he's not being disingenuous in bad faith. That was the whole reason why I brought that up. To clarify, guys, I have no issue in conceding or even granting that, you know what, gender identity does have like real neurobiological underpinnings. Fuck it. I never ever said that I think it's not real. I think gender identity and gender dysphoria is a very real thing. You can have incongruence with it. I just think that the way he's framing it and the way that he's using the science to make his argument is it doesn't work. But in regards to him saying the thing about complexity, I'm not sure that I recall that, but yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, and I don't know if he made the leap or if this debate's even about the leap, but the sort of response to once it's accepted, whether or not to give affirmation on that in gender affirming care. I don't know what your like opinion is on that, but
sorry, give me one moment. No, I think I mentioned earlier in the debate he is making a leap. He's going from like he dismisses causality, so he essentially just infers brain, therefore identity, therefore woman. Where he's fine, I'll grant the brain equals identity. Where he's jumping from identity therefore equals or defines woman or defines gender is what I'm not understanding and what I was trying to dig into. I didn't understand that position. He never provided me substantiation as to why gender identity would be what defines gender in itself. And I explained earlier that there's a distinction between gender identity as a psychological and neurological theoretical model. I agree that it is a real theoretical model that is currently being studied, and they're adding evidence to it and so forth, and they're looking into it more and more, and we're uncovering new things. That's why I'm willing to grant it, because there's a possibility that there is some kind of real grounding to his position. So that's why I was fine with granting it. I just didn't like that he was misusing the science, because I don't think he actually oh, did someone leave? No. I don't think he actually understands it. He was saying that this theoretical model now defines the term gender in the same way that evolutionary theory does not define the term evolution. It's the same thing. But
also, like, how can he make any leap from, like you said, neurological thinking to identity to gender when he doesn't even have a basis of criteria for what defines gender, right? So, like you were saying, like in different societies, he cannot classify what a woman is, so you can't even make that leap, and you can't even debate that leap.
Yeah, that's why that's why at first when I started talking about the science, I went into it a little bit just to show, like, he didn't even know what a longitudinal study was and the relevance of it to proving or like isolating variables and showing that there is some kind of cause effect, some causal relation between what he was claiming. So that's evidence in itself that he doesn't understand scientific method or epistemology. But also, the reason why I left the science and I went to the philosophy is because it was already evident to me he didn't know the science. And I wanted to pin him down on his philosophy position, because it doesn't matter how much science he has. If he can't provide a philosophical justification that is logically and internally consistent, then there's nothing for me to argue with. Even after he brought all the science afterwards, it's kind of irrelevant because, again, he hasn't substantiated to me what gender is, nor has he provided the connection between it. But, okay, it's been 5 minutes. Thank you for coming up. Sorry to kick you off, but I just want to allow other people to come up.
Yeah, no, it was a good debate. Good job.
Thank you. Okay. Let me read a couple of the comments. Has anyone posted the debate? I will post the debate on my YouTube channel, hopefully today, question mark? I don't know. If Haji wants to, like, edit it by today.
Yeah, I can try. I want to try like do like a cool animation thing when you're speaking. Like, I don't know.
I'll either post a debate. If Haji wants to help me, it'll probably be like tomorrow or something, or like in a couple days, but the debate definitely will be posted. I'm sure people will clip it as well. Okay, let's move on to the next guest.
Hello. Oh, this is
Hi.
Hi. You did good on the debate.
Hi, Pookie.
First of all, hello. Yeah, I just had like more praxis-based questions, not like mostly relating, because I know that he was talking about femininity, but like the type of femininity where you define it based off of things like softness, like things that aren't necessarily related to biology, but that are more like socially constructed. So do you think that femininity is a cluster concept?
I'll be frank, I don't think I have like a well formulated position on this. However, I think if I had to give an answer now, I would say, yeah, I think it's a cluster concept.
Okay, and do you think that cluster concept can be coextensional to like woman or female, like in the way that like the word woman is coextensional to like female, the biology? Do you think femininity can be that to women?
When you say coextensional, do you mean, do I think there is overlap?
Yeah, like as in people we like exhibit feminine characteristics, are they statistically likely to be women?
Oh, okay. Yes, I think they are statistically typically likely to be women, obviously because we have like social conventions and so forth. But yeah, I think I would agree generally, yeah, it is coextensive.
Okay. And then this is something I asked you before, but basically you said that generally when we're using common usage, it tracks biology, which I think is true to like a large extent. But then like I gave that like example, like it's like a specific cultural example, but like if you see like a niqabi woman, for example, you can't really see her biology or anything. Like there's no like secondary even sex characteristic you can refer to. It's more of like something like you said, it was associative, like an associative thing. We associate the niqab with women, and also this is specifically like culturally contingent. So at what point, how can we say that something is associative versus saying that something is like within a cluster, right? Because some secondary sex characteristics, we like they're associative. At first they have to be associative because like, you know, we're not necessarily saying that you have to have these things, like these things determine if you're a one. We're just saying that there's a high likelihood that they are. So at what point do we say that something that's associative ends up within a cluster versus not?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Okay, two responses I want to give. The first thing I want to give is about the niqabi example. First of all, this was kind of what I was trying to explain to Mike, but he wouldn't let me speak. So the same way that if I have a cup of alcohol, like rubbing alcohol, again, I'm not referring to alcohol like the one that gets you drunk. Rubbing alcohol, just clear rubbing alcohol, it looks like water, right? But we don't consider that to be water, in spite of the fact that it has all the properties to look like water. Unless, like, maybe you're a chemist and you work with alcohol a lot, you might be able to tell, you know, the way its fluidity and so forth. But generally, to the average person, alcohol in a cup is going to look like water. In spite of this, we still don't consider that to be water. So that indicates that we don't have our truth tracking features and how we define things are not limited to merely how we commonly observe them. So how we observe them from the outside, right? We also define them by something deeper, something more intrinsic. So for example, like with the water, I still consider it to be H2O. I don't define water just by its properties, right? Although those are that's like an extended definition of it, it's extended understanding of it. I primarily define its core definition is based in something chemical. In terms of how we, you know, determine whether a trait is determinative or category constituting or associative,
If it's biology, biologists decide that. If it's going to be socially, people socially define it, right? Pretty
yeah,
much
I
that
think
works.
what makes something associative is that
especially in the way that I would understand it, in the way that you understand woman, it might be different. But in the way that I'm defining and arguing what a woman is, I would argue that it's only associative when it's something that's commonly associated with women, but it has no biological underpinning. So it can co-occur with a category frequently, but it's typically going to be a byproduct of something else other than biology. So culture, environment, labeling, sexism, so forth. It doesn't support or reliably support projectable inferences. So like, yeah, that would be my position on in terms of like what's associative. Like for example, certain speech patterns, like women having a higher pitched voice. Of course, there's something biological to this, but it's exacerbated or exaggerated by social conventions. So women might exhibit much higher voices in comparison to what is natural to conform to something social. Or for example, wearing makeup. I don't think this is intrinsic to being a woman because it doesn't have a biological underpinning. It has some other byproduct that is the result of, again, culture or environment. So I don't think that's what makes someone female or makes them a part of the cluster. I don't know if that makes sense.
Hudson Bike called you pretty. What the hell? Is he live? I don't see the comment.
Who's Hudson Bike? Oh, Mike called you pretty?
Yeah, is he live?
I thought you said Hudson Bike. I don't care if he called me pretty.
No, oh, he's live. Okay, I was curious. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Shan. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Should we watch his live? Okay, anyways, sorry.
And by the way, like isn't...
respond.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wait, hold on.
Okay, so then, but like within a given society, say that there is some, like you know, there is a niqabi woman where you can't really see her biology. It's more of like a cultural thing. It's not really associated with being a woman. It's more socially contingent, like you said. So then, would you say that's common usage, that it's not included in common usage, that when people refer to, like when people use the word woman, they wouldn't use things like that?
If I'm actually, guys, he is live. He's on his second account, but we can maybe watch it afterwards. I don't think I'll include it in the YouTube video, but what was I gonna say? Yeah, as for your question about the niqabi thing, sorry if I'm understanding what you're asking me correctly. Are you asking we don't understand it to be associated with, like, for example, conventionally, society doesn't understand niqab to be something that is for females and women? Is that what you're asking me?
Like it's more like when people are using common usage, don't they use the niqab as like their reasoning to jump and conclude like, okay, this person is wearing a niqab, therefore they're a woman, therefore they're female. Like common usage tracks things that might be socially mediated.
Well, okay, here, this is what I would say to this, is I think Islamically, niqab is defined, like, you don't wear niqab unless you are female, right? And it's Islamically impermissible to wear niqab if you are not female, to imitate the women, to imitate the females. And assuming that the person is indeed a Muslim, right, they would likely follow the stipulations that Islam gives. So it's kind of intuitive that I can assume that I can infer that if someone is wearing the niqab, that they are indeed women.
Okay. But then you would not include this within the cluster concept of a woman. You would just say this is associative because it doesn't have a biological underpinning.
Yeah. I would still consider it to be something associative.
Okay. And then just like one last question. So when you talk about cluster concepts, and you were talking about well, actually you didn't get to talk much about the Burt model, but from what I know, you were using literature across multiple languages, multiple cultures, and when you're talking about common usage and when you're trying to form a cluster, you're trying to look at something that applies to the most amount of people, like across multiple time periods, assuming you're not just using like specific, like books from specific time periods. So I was wondering that can you have a cluster concept, for example, for femininity it's culturally contingent, it doesn't apply universally, like it is a cluster concept and applies within a specific society. Like say we have like I don't know, like a medieval Arab
Wait,
society, and
I
the
agree
women
with
are
you.
wearing.
I agree that femininity is something like socially constructed. I don't disagree with that. I just don't think it should be what defines a woman.
Yeah, because it wouldn't define because it would, because the thing is femininity is socially mediated and historically contingent.
Yeah.
So if you use it to define people, then it would only be specific to that context and area.
Yeah, the reason why I didn't like him conflating femininity and womanhood is because, or trying to insinuate that they're the same thing, is because him saying that, oh, it's determined by different cultures and it's subjective and so forth is harmful, right? I think you can understand why that it's intuitively harmful just from what I know about you, right? Like if I define a woman as something that is submissive within one society, and then you I define femininity as submissiveness, and then I attach femininity to womanhood, I am now saying that what makes you a woman is your femininity along with some other properties that I believe that you should possess socially. So now you're saying that, and the way that HPCs work is if you lose one property, it becomes less likely that you are a part of that category. So one property, like for example, you're not submissive, isn't a lot, but given all the social properties, it is enough to like start disparaging women and saying, oh, you're not feminine enough, you're not woman enough, you're like a man, you're masculine and so forth. And these things have been, how do I say this? The patriarchal societies and men and so forth have weaponized these things against women. Our gender identity and the way that we express it and so forth is something that is very essential to us as human beings. Like we want to have some kind of alignment with that. And so it's been a way for patriarchy to use these things against women, to make them feel ashamed, to get them to conform to certain things that they don't necessarily need to conform to, or by benevolent sexism and so forth. And so that's why I just don't like conflating femininity with what's it called, with woman. And I think, yeah, that's something socially constructed. I think a man can be more feminine, and that's fine.
Okay, yeah. That's all the questions I had. I think you did very good in the debate. I think you said stop, Mike, more than you actually said the word woman in the debate, bro.
Sorry, I'm like sorry. I don't like being interrupted because I have ADHD. If you interrupt me, I'm not gonna remember. And he like I really, really was trying also not to interrupt him. I'm sure there were times where I did it. But that's why I was like tweaking out. But anyways, okay, thank you for coming up, Shan Shan.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Wait, is he just yapping, or can I go up and press him?
Wait, let me bring up one more person. Should I bring up Pippi or Yoma?
People are saying Pippi in the comments. They're spamming Pippi, I think. I don't know who it is though, but
let's do Pippi. Okay, 5 minutes, Pippi. And then I want to watch Haji go up. I'm gonna go like look at it on another account while you're up there, and we'll stream it.
Or hopefully he accepts me though.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Is my connection bad?
No, your audio is a little.
It says it's
fine.
low, but we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, as long as you hear me. Okay. Yeah, I'll keep it brief. You said you want to go do something, so yeah, maybe another time we can talk more in depth about it. But I just want to say two things specifically. Julian said a few of the things that I was going to say. So, but yeah, one of them was just that I missed some of the debate, so I don't want to misrepresent you here, but this stuff about some issues with his concept. You mentioned something about stability and then something about having trouble picking out new instances. Were those just about issues with family resemblance concepts or cluster concepts, or specifically about his?
He's a nominalist and he holds to family resemblance. He does both.
Yeah, that was like my contentions were mostly just with conventionalist and resemblance nominalism as a whole, not just his position, but especially his position, because resemblance nominalism I don't think is an issue if you can highlight a dimension of similarity and a degree of similarity, and then like reasons why those boundaries are relevant. I have no issue. If he gave me that, I would have been like, okay, like there's not much I can say. But he wasn't giving me anything, and so the fact that he couldn't give me anything, his argument regresses or collapses back into extreme nominalism or conventionalist nominalism, which believes that things are just, or categories are purely conventional or arbitrary. So like I can just slap a name on something and now it falls into that, like this is how it's defined. And under conventionalist nominalism, we can't include new, or it's difficult, not you can't, but it's difficult to include new instances because you're not actually, you're not determining like the relevant feature. Like there's no principal fact of the matter. Does that make sense? Yes. That was my contention.
Yeah, it seems like you had more of an issue with what he was saying rather than general concepts of maybe if someone thinks there's a cluster concept, because I heard you say to the last guest that you do think at least one thing is a cluster concept. So that sort of clears it up. You don't think in principle there's an issue, right?
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, there's lots of things that are cluster concepts, yeah. Like all
when it comes to like
dictionary.
Wait, hold on. When it comes to like, for example, I don't know if you were here when he was asking me about my position, but when I was articulating my position on what I believe a female to be, I take the biological definition, and within biology we use HPCs, so homeostatic property clusters, and it's a natural kind. So I don't think that there's an issue with using clusters. You just need to ground them, and you have to have reasons for why those boundaries exist, and you have to substantiate that position. And that he couldn't provide me with that, and because he couldn't provide me with that, and he said that it's just subjective to the society and it's conventional, that means that he's not actually a resemblance nominalist. He's a conventionalist or extreme nominalist who believes that things are just conventional, they're just arbitrary, and by that metric, he doesn't actually have like a way to track the term.
Okay, yeah, I won't touch on any of that stuff because for reasons of time, I'll just say the other thing I wanted to say, and that's that. But also I should say, I'd like to talk about that other stuff sometime maybe, but the other thing I was going to say is, some of the examples that were used to try to motivate the counterposition of Mike's, maybe you want to just say that's yours. I think there was a real disanalogy. So, for example, when things like triangles get used, triangles are paradigm cases of essential terms. And so I don't think that goes to motivate anything.
Sorry, I think you misunderstood.
It was just the principle of he rejects universals. So if we accept universals, you accept that triangularity is universal, right? Go ahead.
No, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, my point in bringing that up is just that. How do I say this? What was I gonna say? I low-key forgot. No, my point in bringing that up was not necessarily like it wasn't like a reductio. It wasn't a refutation to his position. I'll post the whole clip, but if you watch it back, it was me explaining to him how resemblance nominalism works. So I was giving him an example, like for example, triangles. I'm not referring to the concept of triangularity. I'm referring to some kind of prototype, some kind of representative instance when it comes to triangles, right? And it's not just based off of similarity alone when you're talking about prototypical nominalism. It's based off of similarity in the right respect and to a sufficient degree. And so I brought up the example of triangles to demonstrate to him that he needs to give me the right respect, right? The degree of similarity and the dimension of similarity. So that's why I brought it up.
Okay, so you're saying that on the view he was endorsing, you were using triangles as sort of thought experiment to demonstrate something there. I mean, maybe my issue is that, usually nominalism doesn't even get brought up here when people talk about things like cluster concepts or family resemblances, because you can take, the view he was endorsing was a Searlean cluster, and you can either accept or reject universals. You can be a nominalist or not a nominalist and on any of the readings there. And so, maybe it's because I missed some of it, but yeah, I guess I struggled to see the connection between the nominalism stuff, but it sounds like you're saying he was specifically endorsing. Yeah.
Yeah, he explicitly said in his videos, he didn't necessarily, like throughout the live, he didn't bring it up at first, but I brought it up because he's explicitly mentioned not only in his videos, but other live debates he's had with friends I have or mutuals. On multiple occasions, he subscribes to family resemblance and prototypical nominalism. So that's why I was bringing it up.
Okay, and before I go, I'll just ask this. Would you be interested, or do you have a dispute if someone holds the following sort of view where they say, okay, I have a sense of gender terms that I use. I can give an account of them. Maybe it's a family resemblance or a cluster account. This is the way I use the terms, and maybe I think that it pretty well maps onto ordinary use. Maybe I think it actually maps better than something like an adult human female view, something like Burns' view. Do you have a contention with that, and are you interested in engaging in those sorts of views? Because all the neurology stuff, I'm not really interested in that stuff. I wonder if you, I know some people don't have a problem with the sort of view I just endorsed there.
If by that view you mean just like based on private stipulation, that's how you define the term, like that's how you categorize things, then there's not much for me to argue with there. Like if that's how you want to define it personally, and then you want to argue that we ought to use it in that way, maybe I'd be interested in like the normative
And I'm
argument.
additionally saying that.
I think you said common use there.
Yeah, let's say I additionally say that I think my concept performs better with respect to common use.
Like it's more exhaustive of the way.
Yeah, I disagree.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool.
The
Yeah, maybe
reason
sometime we
I
could
didn't get
talk about
to.
that.
Yeah, I have a Discord. We can talk about it then, or maybe on when I go live another day. But I can bring you up. But he didn't really let me get into it. He just kind of said "fuck Bert." But we have we have natural language processing models that we can use to determine contextual usage. And so the way that you could determine common usage is by taking a large data set of literature or articles and so forth, and then pump that into the code, and then the code will essentially determine the definition of the term and its contextual usage, and then we can compare it to its similarity to the dictionary definition, and we can see how accurate that is and so forth. But nonetheless, we can determine common usage. Last thing I'll say is
that sounds really interesting. And look, I'm interested in that sort of thing, and I'm also very interested because I actually hold a sort of view where I'm interested to talk about whether the results will actually favor your view over mine, because there's a view on which it's actually going to be ambiguous with those sort of models what the extension of terms are, even if you understand the intention because of some other facts.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have to say that sounds really interesting. And yeah, I would definitely.
When it comes to the extended use of the term, I'm a little bit more like more lax on that,
Yeah.
But I don't think that most people like Mike, for example, are arguing that that's the extended use of the term. So I would disagree on that. But
yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I hope to maybe catch you live sometime or something.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll have a good night.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh wait, Pippi, if you want to comment, I can follow you back if you want to come up again. Would not be taking what most. Wait, hold on. Some people in the comments are saying it's not taking what most people mean. Yeah. The issue with polling is because of the number of confounding variables. This methodology is far more controlled in comparison to something like polling and taking surveys. If you have an alternative method than polling and surveying people, then I would be willing to hear that out, and I would think that's probably a better method if we could figure out a way to determine what people think they mean or what they mean. Or what people mean. But in terms of polling, not only do we have methodological flaws, and it's like one of the weakest forms of how do I say this? Scientifically, it's a pretty weak methodology. Like my method is better in comparison to in terms of reducing the margin of error. So that's why I bring up BERT modeling and word sensing and contextualizing them, because polling is a bit of an issue. It's when we're trying to substantiate common usage, I don't think that it's by asking people what they think they mean, because what people think they mean is very broad. Like how some people understand what you mean to be biological or what you mean to be social and so forth is a bit iffy. Everybody has a different understanding of it. I think a stronger way to do so is by taking large bodies of text. We can do this we can take it from Twitter as well. We can take Twitter data sets and so forth. But I think that might be a bit messier and harder to clean. But we could take from that as well, right? We can take from any piece of written literature or work and so forth. However, sorry, I was reading a comment. We could take from anything and then analyze those. But the reason why I think polling is weak is just because I said the confounding variable, the methodology isn't as strong. It's not as airtight in comparison to BERT modeling. That's not to say that BERT modeling isn't perfect. I mean, it's perfect. It definitely has its shortcomings. However, I think it's stronger in terms of determining semantic meaning and what people mean when they use the term. Because if I'm writing something out and I use and I determine the contextual usage of it, I think that's pretty indicative in comparison. But 1 second. I had something. I wrote
I think
something
people are confused
down.
because they're saying that like, oh, since you, Raz, you use HPCs, which are cluster concepts, YK and he, it's because the HPC applies to natural kinds. And natural kinds, they can identify which traits are relevant, right? So they looked at the traits that have like causal mechanisms or causal power or whatever. I don't take biology, right? To determine what is a female. For him, when it comes to women, all the traits that is going to identify like a woman, it's going to be arbitrary. That's the
Yeah,
difference. And
Haji.
that's the
Yeah,
difference between
Haji.
natural and social kinds.
Haji hit the nail on the head. The issue with his position, perhaps, yeah, I didn't articulate it that well earlier. The issue with Mike's position is that the reason why his cluster concept doesn't work is because it's a social kind, it's a constructed kind, whereas mine is a natural kind within biology. They're distinct. But I wrote this down in case
Yeah.
anyone wanted to ask, so I
And
could
yeah,
just have it in
natural
like
has like
a.
causal mechanisms and stuff. Yeah. Well, social. I mean, he can argue that's social, but like he would have to give the argument for why we ought to treat gender as social category rather
Keep in
than.
mind, guys,
Well,
I'm
yeah. No,
working
no.
on
Cease.
the.
Wait. To be clear. Yeah.
Haji, hold
Cease
on.
said that doesn't. That. Okay, go ahead.
Wait, hold on, Haji. To be clear to everyone, I am working on a code right now, and I'm building it, and I'm gonna upload it to GitHub for this common usage thing. However, it's very hard to find data sets. It takes a lot of work, and I'm low-key procrastinating a bit, so it's gonna take me some time. But I will upload it to GitHub, and if anybody wants to review it, they can. And if they feel like there's some like things I need to tighten up or things I need to fix, then I can. People can review it. It'll be public. It's not something that's gonna be private. And anyone can use it and upload any data set that they want to it. But I'll probably already do that for the sake of simplicity. But I just wanted to explain one thing, and then we can go back to C's. Hold on. Word sensing would be more relevant than polls and surveys because of methodological reasons. Surveys merely measure what people say they mean under a specific prompt, specific social context with framing effects and so forth, whereas corpora measures actual language behavior in a comparatively natural environment and an intentional environment. So people are very intentional when they're writing literature, when they're writing things online and so forth. Second of all is the confounding variables that come with polling. Poll responses swing depending on wording, political cues, or perceived social penalty of answering. So we have that bias there. And the third issue is interpretation variance. So two people can answer yes in a survey and mean completely different things. Corpus modeling reduces this by directly analyzing contextual usage rather than relying on participants' metalinguistic introspection. And then the fourth, natural language processing pipeline pipeline usage rather than relying on participants. What the fuck did I write here? I don't know what I wrote here. Let me reread that. Natural language processing allows scaling to large samples, consistent procedures, and isolate variables, so we can actually isolate these things. And again, the margin of error is far, far, far less in comparison to something like surveys and polling. But okay, yeah. In terms of what, just ignore cease. But
No, I think he brings up like not a good point, but like something that intuitively will make sense. But just because it's a social concept does not make it not work. Yes, it's possible to have a social cluster. You have to give an argument for why it ought to be a social cluster.
Yeah, I think you
like
misunderstand.
why does women have to be social if it's natural? Like I agree. Like colors on the rainbow are going to be social, are going to be like a social cluster, right? Like whether it's like a car or like a truck is going to be social. But like you have to give an argument for why we ought to treat gender as social. You need to give an argument for that.
Should we watch Mike's live?
Yeah.